Hey everybody, what's up? My name's Debbie. Welcome to my channel. Sorry for the late start today, but I had a doctor's appointment. And that was Judy texting me to tell me that I had the wrong time. So, where is everybody? Take some time off and y'all leave me. Okay, I've got some funny videos I'll play while I'm waiting for everybody. Spike's gonna lick his bed. I don't know why. This video is absolutely unbelievable. The bird surfing on the back of a lizard. And I don't think that's AI either. I think that really happened. Oh, that's not the right one. Okay. I had another one. I don't know where it went. This one's funny too, though. Oh, wait a minute. I screwed up. Wrong button, Debbie. I have never had a cat that would stand up on its hind legs, and I've had lots of cats. Oh my god.
What the fuck is happening? Why is he doing that?
Lifting weights, man.
What?
Yeah, Shadow does that all the time. I gotta find that other one. Hang on, let me see if I can find it. I thought I had it up. Because it's really funny. History. Okay, this is it.
Did anybody else realize that children born in 2023 potentially live to see the year 3000?
If they're a Bible character, that's 977 years. Bless her heart. She's out here doing Old Testament math.
I am my boyfriend's first black girlfriend.
Ma'am, with all due respect, if you're black, I'm black.
If I pull up with some Portillo's, what you gonna do?
I know you just did not eat that damn paper. Don't feel bad. I thought the same thing. The internet has absolutely ruined us all. We need to head on down to the river and rededicate ourselves.
Introducing the Flowbee Precision Haircutting System. You can suck your whole family and watch Uncle Steve suck himself.
What?
My deepest secret is that I'm like 100% gay.
What? Holy Moses on a rocket-powered pogo stick. Never would have guessed that.
Did anybody else realize that children born in 2023?
Okay, I gotta fix this bike cam. Ugh. I don't know why this stupid thing won't go completely muted. Nope, that's too far away. There we go. Former South Carolina Law Enforcement Division investigator Ryan Kelly was fired from his position as chief inspector for the Charleston County Sheriff's Office on June 8th, the agency confirmed. Kelly oversaw the Sheriff's Office's Office of Professional Standards, which handles internal affairs matters. His termination followed allegations of harassment and improper conduct. Before he was head of CCSOIA, he worked for the SLED and testified at Murdaugh's trial. The firing is likely to further complicate the retrial of Murdaugh, says Dick Harpootlian, Murdaugh's attorney. Of course he does. I don't know. If we're done with this day or not. There's just a small amount left on this day. But they could be done. Oh no, there's oh yeah, there's another like hour and something. But there's no sound. Why is there no sound?
What's coming up next, Mr. Waters?
There we go.
Your Honor, we have the GSR expert, and that's the next thing. You know, I think we can get that witness done before the end of the day.
Your Honor, just asked Mr. Griffin, he's the cross on this, and
It shouldn't take long.
talking nothing but GSR for 2 days. I'm a little worried about that timetable.
All right. Well, we'll take about 7 minutes.
Seven. Why 7? That's a weird time.
You may bring the jury.
Mr. President.
Thank you. The next witness.
State of South Carolina would now call forensic scientist Megan M. Fletcher.
Is it being streamed? Should we watch that instead of this? Hey, kid. Oh, boring. Okay.
Raise your right hand, left hand on the Bible. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give the court in this trial shall be the truth, so help you God? I do. Thank you. As you take a seat at this witness stand, state your name again for the record. Spell your last name.
My name is Megan Fletcher, Fletcher.
Good afternoon, Ms. Fletcher.
Good afternoon.
With the court's permission, we go in day 12, okay?
Yes, sir.
Would you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury about yourself, but also your background, your training, and your training in the field of expertise I've asked you to testify about here today, please?
Yes, sir. So I grew up in Ohio. I was born and raised there. After I graduated from high school, I attended Chatham College in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I graduated from there in 2005 with my bachelor's degree in biochemistry and English. After that, I went to Marshall University, where I obtained my master's in forensic science, emphasizing in computer forensics and forensic chemistry in 2007. I then started my career at SLED in 2007 as well, where I started my training to become a trace evidence analyst in the forensic services laboratory. And the first thing that I started training in was gunshot primer residue analysis.
Why did you come to South Carolina?
For the job.
Okay. Did you have any relatives here or family?
I do, but it was really for the job. Trace evidence was always kind of my dream job.
Okay. So tell us some more about trace evidence and your training and your background and what you loved about it.
So trace evidence is a type of evidence that you can't typically see with the naked eye. So you need a microscope or other types of instrumentation to be able to detect it. For trace evidence in the forensic services laboratory at SLED, we consider explosives, fire debris, fibers, glass, gunshot primer residue, paint, fibers, physical fit analysis, pressure sensitive tape, and general physical and chemical unknowns, all different types of trace evidence.
Specifically in the field of gunshot primer residence, tell us about your training, your experience, and what has led you to this point where I'm going off you for an expert in just a minute.
So in 2007, I started my career. I started my training at that point. I began an 11-month training program for gunshot primer residue analysis. It's an in-house training program that consists of practical, written, and oral examinations in the theory of gunshot primer residue, as well as the instrumentation used to analyze that type of evidence.
So what is it?
Gunshot primer residue, well, let's start with gunshot residue. Gunshot residue is everything that comes out of a gun when it's fired. That's the smoke, the soot, the flame, burned and unburned gunpowder particles, but also something called gunshot primer residue. And that's what we're looking for at the Trace Lab at SLED. Gunshot primer residue particles are microscopic molten particles that contain the elements lead, barium, and antimony. They come from the primer component of the cartridge.
And can you explain some more? How do you examine it? What do you do to determine if there's gunshot primer residue?
So I believe that you've already heard about how gunshot primer residue is collected. It's collected using those particle lifts with the sticky surfaces. Once I get those particle lifts in the lab, I will then examine them on a scanning electron microscope with an dispersive X-ray detector. So an SEM EDX.
Now, what's the second thing you said? The SEM, and what did you say after that?
Energy dispersive X-ray detector.
What is that?
Well, the scanning electron microscope's a super powerful microscope. You might be used to a light microscope that you might have used in school, and that might magnify something around 400 times. The scanning electron microscope uses electrons instead. And so we can magnify things 30,000, 50,000 times. The energy dispersive X-ray detector allows us to analyze a sample for which elements are actually present in the sample. So the SEM component, the microscope component, allows us to see a sample and analyze the shape and the morphology of a given sample. But the EDX component allows us to see what elements are actually present in that individual sample.
Now, when I first started years ago, we were just looking for the 3 elements. How has that changed over the years in your specific field?
So currently, we are looking for characteristic particles of gunshot primer residue. It's a singular particle that contains all 3 elements of lead, barium, and antimony. It can't be a particle that contains 1 or 2 of those elements. It has to contain all 3 of those.
And that didn't used to be the case, did it?
No, sir, it did not.
So it's got to contain all 3 of them
Yes, sir.
before you'll clarify it as what? Or determine as what?
I'm sorry?
Before you'll determine as what? It's got to clarify, it's got to contain all 3 of them. Go ahead.
It has to be microscopic. It has to be molten,
Well,
and it has to
questions are
contain lead,
close.
barium, and antimony in order for me to report it as characteristic of gunshot primer residue.
And I know everybody knows except me, but what's molten?
So molten appears to be rounded in shape. It looks like it underwent high heat and pressure. Lots of times they're spherical, so like a ball, but sometimes they might look like a football. Just have to have like a rounded shape to the edges.
And how does evidence get to you, forensic scientist Megan Fletcher? How does it actually come to you?
There's different circumstances, but typically evidence is submitted from a local agency or SLED, and it's submitted through the Evidence Control Department. The Evidence Control Department assigns it a unique lab number, and each item of evidence is assigned an item at that time. It then is brought up to the trace lab by either myself or another analyst or a technician, and then it goes through the process of inventory and then analysis.
How long have you been doing this?
Over 15 years.
You love your job.
I do.
And how many analysis have you performed in the field of, well, in trace evidence to start with?
Over 1,500 cases, samples, well over 3,000.
And have you been offered in courts of record of this state and other states perhaps as an expert in the field of trace evidence and gunshot primer residue? And have you been so accepted in courts of record of this state as an expert in trace evidence and gunshot primer residue?
Yes, sir, 49 times.
Your Honor, this time the state of South Carolina would offer forensic scientist Megan M. Fletcher as an expert in the field of trace evidence to include gunshot primer residue.
We have no objection to her making it 50 times, John.
And we thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, she is so qualified in the field of trace evidence and gunshot primer residue.
Why do you love your job?
I just find it really interesting. With trace evidence, I get to analyze different types of evidence. My daily job duties can change depending on what needs to be done that day.
Let's go over some, just, right where it's basic, but on a live person, human being,
Yes, sir.
blood flowing.
Yes, sir.
Is there a period of time after which SLED's guidelines say we won't try to determine if there's gunshot primer residue on somebody?
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Beyond 6 hours, we will not analyze a GSR kit from a living individual. And the reason that we will not analyze that is because in-house studies as well as peer-reviewed published studies have shown that gunshot residue so readily transfers and is so readily removed around 4 to 6 hours, that beyond 6 hours, it couldn't be tied back to an initial incident.
And what's the common sense answer why you won't do it after 6 hours?
So if you shoot a gun, as soon as you put that gun down, you essentially start to remove those gunshot primer residue particles. They aren't destroyed, but you're simply transferring them to other objects. You might be putting your hands in your pocket. You might touch a steering wheel. You might wash your hands, and that would remove most, if not all, of the particles. So beyond that 4 hours, you're really looking at the total removal of those particles.
So if you didn't wash your hands, just everyday living or touching, could after over 4 hours, you wouldn't want to, or 6 hours, I think you said it is now.
6 hours is our policy, but an in-house study with controlled participants where we informed them that they weren't allowed to wash their hands and told them to basically stick to clerical work, we really saw that drop off around 4 hours.
If you did wash your hands, and you know somebody washed their hands, they told you, hey, I washed my hands, would you test it?
We would.
But would you expect most of them to be gone at that point from washing your hands?
It depends on how well you wash your hands. Okay. We expect most of it to be gone, but we've seen it to still be present even after somebody's washed their hands.
And you did a little bit, if you can do a little bit more for me. Gunshot primer residue, is there a certain, I mean, how do you determine, is there a certain distance, vicinity, shooting? I mean, what are you looking for in determining whether gunshot residue is present, and whether someone was in the vicinity to get it?
So really what we're trying to determine when we're looking for gunshot primer residue is, one, were they in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm? Were they shooting a firearm? Or is it simply transfer? And in most cases, we can't determine whether it's vicinity, which includes shooting, or simply transfer.
Discharge, vicinity, which just mean, are you close to it?
Yeah, so vicinity can be 2 to 3 feet to either side of the shooter, and outwards of about 60 feet in front of the shooter.
Discharge, vicinity, and transfer. What do you mean by transfer?
So you can get gunshot residue on your hands from an object that already has gunshot residue on it, or from a person who has gunshot residue on them. So if somebody else shoots a gun and you shake their hands, you could get gunshot residue on your hand that way. You could also touch a recently fired or a dirty weapon and get gunshot residue on your hands that way.
So if you had just fired a firearm and I came up and shake your hand, could I get it from that?
That is possible.
Okay. If I reached under to grab you to turn you, could I get it if you had been shot with gunshot residue?
So gunshot residue does travel with the path of the bullet. So we do expect to find it on victims who have sustained gunshot wounds. And around that gunshot wound specifically, we do expect to find gunshot primer residue particles. So if you touched that area, there is the possibility of transfer.
Okay. And again, if you don't mind me touching you on the arm, if you had gunshot residue on your arm and I did that, could I get it?
That is a possibility as well.
And what's that called?
So in that case, that would be a secondary or tertiary transfer.
Transfer.
Yes.
From one item to me.
Yes, sir.
Right. And the other way is if I fired the firearm.
Yes, sir.
And if I fired a firearm, where do you look for to see if somebody's fired a firearm based on what they're wearing? Like if I was wearing this right now, fired something here, and you had this jacket, where would you look for potential gunshot residue?
So if I knew that was what you were wearing at the time of the shooting, we would sample from the right sleeve of that jacket, the right chest area of the jacket, the left sleeve of the jacket, and the left chest area of the jacket. We may also want to sample the tie because it's center on your chest, and then the right side of your pants and the left side of your pants. And then your shoes are also a possibility.
Why is that?
Because your shoes are also in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm. Sometimes we get results off of them, sometimes we don't.
Okay. And would you test my hands?
That would be the best evidence, is the hands, because the hands will allow us to link it to a specific incident within 6 hours, whereas clothing, we can't tell you when it got there. And that's because on an inanimate object such as clothing, that gunshot primer residue is going to stay until it's actively removed. So you would have to brush it off, you would have to wash it off, you would have to do some activity to actually remove it from the clothing.
And that was the next thing I was getting into. You beat me to it. So, but if I just shot and washed my hands off, potentially I could have washed it all, gunshot primer residue off, correct?
Correct.
Okay. But on inanimate objects, and you just said it, and I apologize, how long can gunshot residue stay on?
Indefinitely, if you don't touch it, if you're not actively moving it around or washing it, it can stay until it's removed.
Okay. Now let's just say I'm dead, okay?
Okay.
And I got shot just a few feet. You shot me from right here, okay?
Okay.
I fall dead. Would you expect to have gunshot residue on me?
It depends on the firearm, but in general, yes.
And why is that?
So the gunshot primer residue comes out, a large majority of the gunshot primer residue comes out the muzzle of the firearm. And not only does it come out the muzzle of the firearm, but it also follows the path of the bullet. And so wherever that bullet's going, it's going to follow behind it.
And the follow-up to that is it SLED's recommendation now, if you know, like me, I've been shot, do y'all test for gunshot, or will you test for gunshot residue on a deceased person who you know has been killed with a firearm?
SLED will not test on victims who have sustained gunshot wounds. And we have not been testing on those victims since January of 2022.
And prior to that, was it your policy not to do that, or recommend to local law enforcement agencies not to do that?
We didn't have an official policy, but we were recommending it due to the lack of probative information that you could gain from it.
And just say that one more time. What do you mean by the lack of probative information?
So like I said before, gunshot residue can only put somebody in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, or it could say that they transfer gunshot residue on them. So it's just putting gunshot primer residue on them. A victim's already of a gunshot wound has already been established to be in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm. So it doesn't add any additional information to the case.
Now, there's still other items like stippling, which you're not, do you know about stippling based in your field of expertise?
That's not in my field of expertise.
Now, let's get to this case. Forensic scientist Megan Fletcher, did you have an occasion to examine some items for a potential gunshot primer residue?
Yes, sir, I did.
I think we have these marked, so I can find them. Shirt and the pants. I'm going to try to take these in the date, the order that you, chronological order of when you examined.
Okay.
You follow me?
I do.
And I'm going to show you what Mark states 418. And if you, you like gloves?
I have some with me.
Okay, and I think we also have some here. I thought we had a whole box here.
I think that they're on the floor.
You got some. Okay. And why are you using gloves?
I use gloves to protect myself and to protect the evidence. I don't want to put any of my DNA or anything that might be on myself onto the evidence, and I don't want anything that might be on the evidence on me.
And not just gloves. In your laboratory, and I thought I asked you to bring one, but do you wear a lab coat?
When we process clothing, we do wear lab coats, and that helps protect us from our regular clothes from transferring over any evidence onto, or not evidence, but any materials over onto the evidence.
And that's to protect the evidence, really, as much as you, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you have a lab coat and gloves before you start looking at these items.
Well, this also has a DNA request on it. Usually the requests are also on the outside of the box.
So yes, you have your white coat and gloves on when you're in the lab looking at these.
Yes,
Okay.
but because it has a DNA request, we also have a mask on.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Okay, you have a mask in addition to that?
Yes.
Okay, please open 418 and tell the jury what it is. Bless you.
This is SLED Lab L21-09074, item 19. I recognize it with our yellow barcode sticker. And this is SLED Lab number L21-09074, item number 20, again with our yellow barcode sticker.
And what date did you examine these on?
I didn't physically examine these items. Jamie Hall would have taken the particle lifts off of these items, so her initials and date would be on everything. But that the date that she did that would have been June 8th.
Okay. And when did you actually look at them?
I looked at she did call me in while she was processing them, but I didn't physically take custody of these items.
And I understand that. Maybe I was jumping ahead in my mind. Did you have an occasion when Jamie Hall was processing? You say she called you in there?
She did.
Okay, why?
She smelled something rather unusual for our evidence. Our evidence is usually pretty musky smelling. And when she opened up item 19, which is the white t-shirt, she did smell a strong odor of laundry detergent, and I did confirm that with her.
So she smelled that, said, hey, come in here, I want you to see this, or whatever. Could you smell it?
I could smell the laundry detergent as well.
It smelled like laundry detergent.
Yes, sir.
Did you also, so she took a sample from there, a lift, if you will. So you were examining the lifts off the shirt, correct?
Correct.
And the pants.
Correct.
Did you also get to look at the pants that day on June 8th when Ms. Hall looked at them?
I don't remember if I was in there when she processed the shorts, but I have seen pictures of that she took of the shorts.
Okay, and can you describe the shirt and the shorts when you saw them? The pictures of them.
Hey, Flash.
The shirt is a white t-shirt. There is some staining on the lower left-hand side, but relatively clean. The green cargo shorts are clean.
Okay. Now, what did you do? And while we're here, did you also receive the forensic scientist? Let's start with the shirt.
Okay.
Tell the jury specifically now. We got all that. Tell them specifically. What did you do when you examined the particle lifts from that shirt?
The particle lifts were analyzed on the scanning electron microscope, and how we do that in our lab and how most laboratories throughout the world actually do it is use a software program to help us out. And that's because the particles that we're looking at are so small. If you can imagine 2 football fields, we're actually looking for particles the size of a pea on those two football fields. So we use a software that does a little bit of an automated analysis, and that automated analysis uses brightness and contrast that's associated with known particles of gunshot primer residue. And it does that automated analysis overnight for us. And in the next day or over the weekend, whatever it is, we come in, and then it provides us a list of candidate features. It tells us what features that it thinks contain the elements lead, barium, and antimony. As the analyst, I then look at those features, I relocate to them on the SEM. So I physically drive the SEM back to that, to the location that it saved. I look at the particle, make sure that it's molten in nature, and then I use the energy dispersive X-ray detector to scan the particle to determine whether lead, barium, and antimony are present.
And I think Ms. Hall described where she took the particle list from. Did you determine, were there any gunshot residue? What did you find on the shirt?
Particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue were found. Particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue are microscopic molten particles that contain the elements lead, barium, and antimony.
And it can come from?
It can come from being in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm or being transferred from an object that has gunshot primer residue on it. No time frame can be provided as to when these particles were deposited.
And as far as 418 in evidence, the shirt, can you tell where the particle lifts were? From the right sleeve, the right chest side?
Can I refer to my notes, please?
Please. I think His Honor will let you.
So for the white t-shirt, from the particle lift that was collected from the right sleeve, right chest area, 2 particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue were found. And from the left sleeve, left chest area, the particle lift collected from there, 1 particle characteristic of gunshot primer residue was found. Those particle lifts are combined into one result for a result of multiple particles.
What does that mean that you found two particle lifts? I mean, as far as the amount of particles you found, what does that mean in your field of expertise?
In my opinion, is that object, this t-shirt, was either in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm or came into contact with something that had gunshot primer residue on it. I can't tell you the likelihood which one is more likely to have happened.
And that's your opinion, correct?
That's my opinion.
All right. Now, also in 418, and again, these were the defendant's shirts, pants, and clothes and shoes that we're going to get to in a minute that you were examining, correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's what the chain showed.
That's what the submission showed, yes.
Submission slip. Thank you. Now let's go to the pants. Did you have an occasion to examine a particle list that Ms. Hall did?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And again, and we may not go through this every time, but can you tell the jury what you did again when you were examining the particle list, please?
So the particle lifts from the shorts were analyzed the same way as the particle lifts from the shirt, the same way that we analyze every particle lift that's submitted for gunshot primer residue or collected for gunshot primer residue. Goes through the automated process. I go in, I confirm or that there are particles present or that there aren't particles present.
Can you tell me, did you locate any particles and where they were on these shorts, please?
Yes, sir. On the right side, right groin area, there were 2 particles located and confirmed. And then on the left groin area, there was 1 particle located and confirmed.
And you issued a report. What are your findings as a result of finding these particle lists on the shorts that the submission slip said belonged to the defendant on states 418? What's your opinion?
Particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue were found. Again, my opinion is that they were this pair of shorts were either in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm or came in contact with something that had gunshot primer residue on it. Again, I can't tell you which is more likely, and I can't tell you when those particles were deposited.
So they could have come from a transfer holding a gun and then putting it on your pants?
That's correct.
Could have come from being in the vicinity of a shot?
That's correct.
Could they have come from discharging?
Well, the shorts themselves can't discharge. So on an inanimate object, we just say that they're in the vicinity to the discharge.
That's what I meant. Yeah, in the vicinity. The vicinity of a discharge.
Yes.
Why?
Obviously, they can't discharge.
Dang, dude. Ask better questions.
Respectful.
What is wrong
Now,
with you today?
Did you have an occasion to examine the lists from Alex Murdaugh's hands that were lifted by Varnado, I believe?
Yes, sir, I did.
And they're already in evidence. And you basically, after Jamie Hall says, hey, these are all done right, they then go to you, right?
Yes, sir.
These
That's
are already in evidence.
That's not the GSR.
These are the GSR. Anyway, I don't think we need this in evidence. Did you have an occasion to examine the GSR kit?
I did.
It was taken from Alex Murdaugh?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you know, you talked about that 4-hour, 6-hour period. Again, was that checked? And did you make sure that that was collected in the time period or you wouldn't have performed your examination?
That's correct. Not only is it checked by the person inventorying, in this case, Jamie Hall, before I will sign off on that inventory sheet, I also double check the GSR information form. That GSR information form that is included in the kit is also scanned, so we retain a record of it so that I can go back and double check that it was within the 6 hours.
Okay, so you did that.
I did.
All right. And what was did your examination conclude as far as the particle lift that was taken from the defendant, Alex Murdaugh?
So one particle lift was collected from his right hand and one from his left hand. One particle characteristic of gunshot primer residue was found. In general, particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue are microscopic, molten particles that contain the elements lead, barium, and antimony. Gunshot primer residue can come from the discharging of a firearm, being in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, or coming into contact with a surface that has gunshot primer residue on it.
And y'all are going to say that conclusion if it's got just a few particle lifts or a bunch of them, right?
I'm sorry.
Just a general conclusion. That's what you're going to find, that there were particle lifts, and it can come from one of those three ways, right?
Yes, sir.
Discharge, vicinity.
For hands, we have one of those three ways. For clothing, we only have the vicinity and the transfer.
Right. So is that consistent? If I grabbed one of these firearms and handed it to an officer, would that be consistent with your findings? You can get it from a transfer of a firearm?
You could get one particle from transferring from a firearm, yes.
If you fired a firearm and washed your hands and then grabbed a firearm and handed it to a police officer, would that be consistent with that also?
Well, you still had that transfer from the firearm. It didn't really matter what you did prior to that. You still could have had that one particle on your hands from that transfer of the firearm.
Did you have an occasion to examine the shoes?
I did.
Particle list from the shoes.
Yes, sir.
States 419. You still got your gloves on?
No, but I can put another pair on.
And what were you provided regarding these shoes?
We were provided that these were the shoes collected from Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
And did you, were you able, well, tell me what your examination from the particle list revealed.
No particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue were detected.
How many?
None.
None.
No, none.
You know, think about the lab. Did you really know about, do you know anything about the case that I mean, at that point, you're examining something, you don't know anything about who's wearing what or what you're examining, do you? Or who's you're examining, other than the submission slips.
No, I know who it is based on the submission sheet,
Right.
which is important because it has to come from somebody who didn't sustain a gunshot wound.
Okay, and I got that. That's a bad question. But other than that, you don't know about the case or what evidence, potential evidence, right?
I just know that it was a priority request.
And you don't know what shoes the potential suspect was wearing during the day, or how many shoes they were wearing, if they were even wearing shoes, do you?
No, sir.
So your results after finding no gunshot primer residue or what on your report? Will you read it like you reported it?
Yes, sir. No particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue detected. The absence of primer residue on the item is consistent with, but not limited to, the following scenarios: the item not being in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, cleaning of the item, excessive blood or debris on the item, environmental factors including wind and rain, the ammunition discharged, lead-free, non-toxic, or some .22 caliber rimfire ammunition not producing particles characteristic of the conventional primer residue, or the firearm not producing primer residue on the item when discharged.
So at this point, you've examined a shirt,
Yes, sir.
shorts,
Yes.
hands,
Yes, sir.
gunshot, and shoes.
Yes.
And the date you examined all those again was what?
The date that they were placed on
The particle list that you examined, yes.
Yes, the date they were placed on the scanning electron microscope was June 8th, 2021.
June 8th.
Yes, sir.
And that's the same day that Jamie Hall smelled the shirt.
Yes, sir.
Same day you smelled the shirt.
Yes, sir.
Did you receive any other items in this investigation where you were requested to determine whether or not there was any gunshot primer residue?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I want to show you now what's, I believe, with everybody's help, states number 100, seatbelt. Thank you very much. And
No,
you
not
said a
really.
priority was placed on this case, right?
Yes, sir.
Do trial.
Do you sometimes, have you been present when Jamie Hall was doing the particle lifts, and have you actually assisted?
Yes, sir, especially if there is an abnormal item submitted for analysis.
All right, and abnormal's got a lot of definitions, but in your world, what does that abnormal mean?
So typical items that we receive are obviously gunshot residue kits, but clothing items like T-shirts or hooded sweatshirts or pants or shorts or shoes, so things that we can have a standard operating procedure for. Those things we can say that we're going to collect from the same areas every single time. Other items are not so typical and then require a little bit more analysis on them.
States 100, is that example of one of those?
Yes, a seatbelt would be an abnormal item.
Do you know when you examined this?
The seatbelt was examined on September 1st, 2021.
And it's brought to your lab?
Correct.
To the director's lab, excuse me. And is this what you examined?
Yes, sir.
And did you actually assist Ms. Hall in attempting to get particle lifts off this?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, so you were both in the room?
Correct.
Gloves on?
Yes.
Jacket on?
Yes.
Mask on?
Yes.
Okay. And can you tell these folks, can you help me tell them what this is and where you attempted to get particle lifts?
Yes. So this is, I had to Google this because I'm not super familiar with the seatbelt assembly. This is considered the buckle. This is the part that everybody sees in their vehicle. This bottom portion is what is in between the center console and the seat and not exposed when a person is sitting in the vehiole.
So if I'm driving, is this going to be on my right side?
It should be on your right side, yes.
And what is this?
So just start. Here, the next part that everybody's familiar with is the latch plate, which goes into the buckle. And then there's an entire belt that goes into the retractor wheel.
Can you
And
pull that? Let's pull it. Don't let it go.
I got it.
Where did y'all attempt, you and Ms. Hall attempt to get particle lifts?
So we stretched it out as far as it would go, and we took samples, 3 samples from the belt, front or both sides, and we just divided it into 3 sections and took samples from those 3 sections.
And this was an abnormal item that you assisted Ms. Hall with?
Yes, sir.
Will you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the results of your examination, if any?
Yes, sir. 1 particle characteristic of gunshot primer residue was found. In general, particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue are microscopic molten particles that contain the elements lead, barium, and antimony. Gunshot primer residue can come from being in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm or coming into contact with a surface that has gunshot primer residue on it. However, no information can be provided as to the time frame in which this particle was deposited.
So in common sense term, how could that get on the seatbelt? Where did you actually find the particle?
The particle was located on the particle lift collected from the buckle. So that piece with the red button.
Just in common sense, in your expert opinion, how could that particle get on that buckle?
It could be from touching something that has gunshot primer residue on it, or possibly being in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm.
So it could be a transfer.
It's probably most likely a transfer, yes, sir.
Say why is it probably most likely a transfer?
It's just usually not exposed to the vicinity. If there isn't a gunshot out of that vehicle, then transfer is the most likely scenario.
Just makes sense, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you submitted another potential piece of evidence in this case, forensic scientist Megan Fletcher.
Yes, sir, I was.
And what was that?
This was a blue rain jacket, kind of poncho type jacket.
Do you know when that came into your custody? When you looked at it the first time?
October 5th, 2021.
Of course. This time states 430 and 439.
Excuse me, Your Honor, we renew our earlier objection to this evidence under 403, but we don't have any additional objections.
Yes, sir, submitted.
I first want to show you, I don't know if I'm going to use that ammo or not yet, but just showing what's 430 right now. Is that what you examined?
Those are images of what I examined, yes.
Images of what you examined.
Yes, sir.
And tell the folks where you conducted this examination specifically.
I conducted this examination in the trace evidence laboratory.
I may need them. I'm sorry. In the trace laboratory.
Yes, sir.
And I first noticed there's a states 430. It appears that the well, let me put this on here. I'm sorry. It looks like it's on a table or something.
It's actually on two tables. It was large enough in order for us to be able to lay it out. We had to put two tables together.
Large enough you had to put two tables together.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And why is it on this white? What's it on? What's underneath?
Underneath it is butcher paper, and that's used to protect the item of evidence, but also used to collect any trace evidence that may need to be examined.
And it looks like on the right there may be a ruler or a measurement.
Yes, it was just a sticker with ruler on it just to help guide us with the general size of it. We didn't take any specific measurements of anything.
But is it fair to say that that's how it looked when you saw it in October?
Yes, sir, it is.
October 8th?
October 5th.
Excuse me, of 21. This report was dated October 8th. I apologize. You're with Ms. Hall. You have your jacket on, your gloves on, your mask on?
Yes, sir.
And tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, did it take two of you to do this?
Yes, sir, it did.
Why?
So I gave Jamie Hall direct instructions on where to collect from, and while she was doing that, I was taking the notes.
Double teaming it?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to try not to get the question. I apologize, but 226. Is that what's depicted?
I can look at them. This jacket is the jacket I examined. My lab number, the item number 173, my initials, and the date in which we examined it is on there.
And is this the same picture of what we just showed, 430, I think?
It's the same image that you just, or this is the jacket that was in the image you just showed.
Okay, and I'm gonna get this away. I don't want to bother any of the jurors, so I'll get this away here. So you and Ms. Hall laid this out to examine it, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did you determine specifically where you were going to check to see if there were any particles?
So typically when we're looking for gunshot primer residue, we're looking for somebody who was in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm. For this particular case, we were provided information that something might have been transferred in this item that had gunshot primer residue on it. Therefore, we treated it like an item that needed to be checked for transfer. Therefore, we had to collect particle lifts from the entirety of the item, including the interior.
You can either do it from up there or down here. How did you do it? How did you do it? What'd you start with? Collecting potential particle lifts or particle lifts.
So in total, we collected 25 particle lifts from the jacket. When I say we covered everything, we covered everything. We collected from the exterior of the hood, the right sleeve, the left sleeve, the right chest, the left chest. There's a middle pocket on the jacket. So we collected the whole middle section, including the pocket. The pocket also has like a hand warmer section. It's got a little bit of fleece inside. We collected from inside of that. And then we split the bottom half in two, collected one particle lift from the right side and one from the left. We then flipped the jacket over and took one particle lift from the right sleeve into the right back on the top of the jacket, the left sleeve into the back on the top of the jacket. Let me check this real quick. The back sample, the lower half was again split in half, and the right side was collected as well as the left side.
I'm going to ask you to be a little, you said 25. Were there a total of 52 particle lifts?
There were a total of 25 particle lifts.
How many on the outside?
How many particle lifts?
Yes, specifically, please.
13.
And can you tell us now where they were?
Where the
Particle lifts? Yes. Where did you swab specifically?
The outside of the hood.
Lifts, not swab. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay.
The outside of the hood, the front right sleeve, the front right chest, the front left sleeve, the front left chest, the middle pocket area, the interior of the pocket area, like a hand warmer section. The bottom half of the coat was split into two, so the bottom right side and the bottom left side. The coat was flipped over, and the sleeve and top half of the jacket on the right side was collected. The sleeve and top half of the jacket on the left side was collected. And then the bottom half, the right side was collected, and the left side was collected.
So you mentioned the pockets in here. Did you find anything inside these pockets? Warmers, or where you put your hands, if you will.
As far as particles of gunshot primer residue?
Yes.
No particles were detected inside that pocket there.
None.
None.
But you checked.
We did check.
Okay. And the particle lifts on the outside of the jacket were how many?
A total of particle lifts?
Yes.
13, I believe.
Okay. And what does that tell you, as in your opinion, as an expert in the field of gunshot residue?
Oh, are you asking the number of particles of gunshot primer residue or particle lifts?
Particle list and then your findings.
Okay, there were 13 particle lifts collected from the exterior of the jacket, and I did find particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue on it.
Now, what does that mean?
That jacket could have been in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, or something that had gunshot residue on it could have transferred to that object. I can't tell you when that happened or how it happened.
And how many, again, inside the pockets, you found no gunshot residue?
That's correct.
Why, you said it, you flipped it over and checked the inside?
Yes, we turned it inside out and also collected samples from the inside.
Have you done that before?
I don't believe I've done an interior unless it was explicitly stated that somebody was wearing a shirt or a coat inside out.
So you actually turned it inside out?
Correct.
And tell them what you and Ms. Hall did.
So once we turned it inside out, we collected particle lifts from the front and the back again. So the inside of the hood, the right sleeve to, you can see seam tape on this. It's that clear stuff that's kind of falling apart off of the jacket. So we used that as kind of a guide for us. So we used the front right sleeve to the center section of the coat, the left front sleeve to the center section of the coat, the middle area directly behind the pocket, the right and the left side on the bottom half of the jacket. We turned it over again and did the right sleeve to the center point on the top of the jacket, the left sleeve to the center point on the top of the jacket, split the bottom in half again, did the right bottom half of the jacket and left bottom half of the jacket.
And what, after your examination, what were your results?
Particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue were also found on the interior of this jacket.
Is there a certain number or could you have kept checking and checking? Was there a lot of gunshot primer residue inside of the jacket?
I would say there were a significant number of particles characteristic of gunshot primer residue on the inside of this jacket, yes.
How many did you determine?
I confirmed 38 particles characteristic.
And I'm saying determined, confirmed. You confirmed how many?
38.
38.
Yes, sir.
From the inside of the rain jacket, poncho,
Yes, sir.
whatever this is, correct?
Yes, sir.
Could you, and you taught me a word too, is there something that kind of led you, there could have been more, but you just basically stopped checking?
So if we go back to when I talked about the automated analysis, it gives me a list of candidate features that may contain lead, barium, and antimony. There were significantly more particles were listed as candidate features containing the elements lead, barium, and antimony. I had to make an analyst decision based on my experience to stop at the number that I did.
Candidate features,
Yes, sir.
which meant if you went on, you would expect to find more gunshot primer residue, correct?
It could. I would have had to still check the morphology. I would have had to make sure that they were molten around. I also would have had to check that they didn't contain exclusionary elements like high amounts of iron and magnesium. But there was a possibility that there would have been more on it.
But you found 38.
I confirmed 38, yes, sir.
And 23 candidate features if you'd gone further, correct?
More than 23.
More than 23?
Yes, sir.
Did there come a point, if you had finished that examination, how long would it have taken you if you had checked everything?
If I had checked every single particle, it probably would have taken me a week.
So is there a percentage that you determine, hey, I'm going to stop at this point and say, here are my results? There's some other candidate features. Is there a guideline out there?
We don't have a specific guideline. It really is based on our experience. And for this particular case, I stopped anywhere between 10 and 20%. Some areas I was able to do a full 100% because there weren't that many to go look at. But other areas, I did have to make a determination.
Of when to stop?
Of when to stop, yes, sir.
Okay.
That it's on the inside in order for it to be consistent with transfer. An object or objects with a high amount of gunshot primer residue on it would have had to transfer to it. So they would have had to have more gunshot primer residue particles on them to begin with in order to transfer the amount of gunshot primer residue I found on the scope.
And as far as a recently fired firearm, would your findings be consistent with that item containing a recently fired firearm?
It is possible, yes.
With that number of particles?
With that number, it is possible.
Is there any other possibility? You
If
stated one. Are there any more?
if the jacket was inside out and simply in the vicinity to the discharge of a firearm, it could have also had that number of particles on it.
In your opinion, and just life and the job you love, that's a large number of particles, isn't it?
It was a significant amount of particles, yes, sir.
On the inside of the jacket?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not doing this for this, but just to show, I'm almost 6 feet. I am 6 feet, a little over 6 feet on the record reflect. But anyway, does this look like a full length garment to you?
I would say that it would fit most people down to their knees or so.
Beg court's indulgence. And just in conclusion again, as far as the hood, you said there was one particle outside the hood?
Yes, sir. I was able to confirm one particle on the exterior of the hood.
And how many particles on the inside of the hood did you determine there were?
3 particles were confirmed on the inside.
Inside of the hood?
Yes, sir.
And finally, since this is an inanimate object, how long would you expect that gunshot primer residue to stay on there?
Until it's actively removed.
Say that again, to us what?
Until it's actively removed.
That means washed, cleaned, whatever.
Yeah, brushing it, like aggressively brushing it off, washing it in a washing machine, cleaned, hosed off, something like that.
If a recently fired firearm was wrapped up inside that jacket, would that be consistent with your findings?
There is a possibility of that, yes, sir.
Thank you very much. That's all we have. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to adjourn for the day and resume at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Please do not discuss the case. Have a good evening.
Going to size that person up and down. Different. It comes.
I'm a forensic scientist.
present, sir.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Day number 13, cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Is it Agent Fletcher or Miss Fletcher?
Miss Fletcher's fine.
Are you an agent?
Technically, I am commissioned. However,
Okay.
I'm a forensic scientist.
Right. Okay. Well, Ms. Fletcher, just want to go over a little bit of what you testified about yesterday and hit some smaller points. But I mean, you pretty much you said this yesterday, but gunshot primer residue is not biodegradable, correct?
No, sir. They're composed of heavy metals of lead, barium, and antimony. So they're individual particles of those metals. They are not biodegradable.
So if gunshot primer residue is on a surface, it will stay on that surface and will not degrade for hundreds of years.
Potentially, there's not studies that go out that far, but potentially.
Right. But the only way that current science knows to get primer gunshot residue off of anything is through cleaning, wiping it off, scrubbing it off, spraying it off. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And it comes out when a gun is shot, right?
Yes, that's how gunshot primer residue is formed. It comes out through the muzzle and in a semi-automatic through the ejector port or through a revolver through the muzzle gap. So any opening within the gun, it'll come out.
Yeah, so the gunshot primer residue will follow the projectile, whether it's pellets or a bullet, out the barrel of the gun, rifle, or pistol, will it not?
Yes, sir, it will.
And then if you have a semi-automatic rifle or shotgun, gunshot primer residue will go follow the discharge cartridge or shell shot as it opens up, right?
Yes, sir. Studies have shown as far as about 60 feet. Beyond that, they haven't been studied.
Okay. So within 60 feet of a gun being shot, there will be gunshot primer residue on whatever's around there. Fair enough?
Whatever's around the bullet, per se. When it gets out that far, it's more in the immediate vicinity of the bullet.
But for sure, gunshot primer residue will accumulate on the firearm that's being used, will it not?
Yes, sir, it will.
And if it's not properly cleaned and maintained, I mean, it'll stay there until it gets wiped off by someone's hand or left out in the rain or sprayed off, right?
Yes, sir, it will.
Okay. And when you were referring to transfer GSR, is that one of the things you're referring to?
Yes, sir. If you touch a gun that had been fired at any point, then you have the potential to transfer it to your hands.
Now, this jury has seen throughout the course of the trial a number of folks holding up some firearms that are in evidence. A couple of shotguns, 300 blackout, and they've seen they've seen witnesses hold up. Mr. Meadows held up yesterday this blue rain jacket, which you had identified having 38 particles or more on it. My question to you is it very possible that where you're sitting right now, there's gunshot primer residue?
That is a possibility, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you did you work in the Forensic Services Laboratory at SLED, correct?
Correct.
And there's a trace evidence operation manual pertaining to gunshot primer residue analysis, correct?
Yes, sir, there is.
And that governs you follow that manual, do you not?
Yes, I do.
And you agree with the statement that gunshot primer residue evidence is most probative in the following situations: from subjects who have not sustained a gunshot wound, from subjects who have not been in the proximity to the discharge of a firearm or admitted to discharging a firearm, and from subjects who were not found in the possession of a firearm.
I do agree with that, yes, sir.
And that's a statement of your operations manual.
Yes, sir, it is.
And you obtained clothing, which we know is from Richard Alexander Murdaugh, shirt, shorts, and shoes. And did someone under your supervision did lifts from those clothing items so that you could analyze the particles, correct?
Yes, sir. Jamie Hall collected the particle lifts off of those items.
And those and that collection was done on June 8th, I believe, was it not?
Yes, sir, it was.
And are you aware that the clothes were collected on June the 8th?
Yes, sir, I was.
And were you aware that when the clothes were collected, they were wet?
I didn't know that they were wet until Jamie opened up the evidence, and it was evident that the shirt was a little damp and the shoes were definitely damp.
And so it's just been a few hours that they had been placed in some sort of bag, and you open it up and they're wet, and you smell laundry detergent.
That's correct.
Okay. Were you aware that it had been raining that evening at Moselle?
I was not aware of that, no, sir.
In any event, you tested after Ms. Hall, is that it, Jamie Hall?
Yes, sir.
She did the lifts, and you located 3 particles from the white shirt.
Yes.
You were at 3 particles from the shorts.
Yes.
No particles from the shoes.
Yes.
And there was no particles on Mr. Murdaugh's hands.
There was one particle on his right hand.
I'm sorry, there was 1 particle on his hand. And you would agree that that amount of primer residue, gunshot primer residue found on an individual who you had been informed had a firearm in his hand when the police arrived, that it was consistent with the transfer from a firearm.
When I analyzed the evidence, I did not know that he had a firearm in his hand, but that would be consistent with somebody who had a firearm in his hand prior to collection.
Okay. Well, you learned that at least by June the 9th at 11:03 a.m. when you had a telephone call with Agent Owen, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you told him that that amount of gunshot residue would be consistent with the transfer from a firearm.
Yes, sir.
And you stand by that here today.
I do.
Now the seatbelt assembly, let's talk about that for a minute. You did lifts, you and Ms. Hall or Agent Hall did lifts of the buckle, is that right?
Yes, sir.
The latch plate, is that right?
Yes.
And then 3 spots along the belt, the webbing.
Yes, sir. 3 areas along the belt. We divided the belt into 3 sections and did both sides of it. And those were the 5 areas that we collected.
I see. So did you take lifts from the entire webbing?
Yes, sir. We retracted it as far as it would go, divided it into 3 sections, and collected them.
And the results of the lifts, and you did analysis, was there's 1 particle on the buckle, right?
That's correct.
0 on the latch plate.
Correct.
0 on the belt, on any of the sections of the belt.
That's correct.
So the whole belt was 0. And so they found 1 particle.
I confirmed 1 particle on the buckle. Yes, sir.
And you can't say how or when the particle was deposited on the belt, can you?
I cannot.
And I think you told this to Agent Owen that if Alex Murdaugh was shooting earlier in the day or anytime at some point in time while he had that vehicle, and he got after shooting, he got in the vehicle that has the ability to transfer any gunshot residue primer to that vehicle, right?
Yes, sir. I cannot tell you when that particle was deposited.
So if he had had that vehicle for 2 years and he'd been out shooting and got in it, I could have deposited 1 particle on the buckle and it could stay there unless it got knocked off, right?
Yeah, unless it was cleaned, it could have stayed there. Yes, sir.
And if he went and got a gun and then put it in the car and then he got back in the car and he got transferred GSR on him and he could hit the buckle and that could put it on there, right?
Yes, sir. That could have happened.
It's just very, very small. You can't see it with a naked eye, but it stays there forever unless it's moved.
That's correct, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, you were also asked to do an analysis of blue rain jacket. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir, I did.
And once again, just like the seatbelt, there's no way for you to know when the gunshot primer residue was deposited on the blue rain jacket.
That's correct.
It could be at any point in time from the date that blue rain jacket was manufactured, right?
Well, probably not on the manufacturer date unless they were firing guns in the manufacturing plant, but any time after a consumer takes possession, probably.
So if a consumer took possession of that garment 4 years ago, and we're going to talk about how you can get gunshot primer residue on it, but unless it's cleaned off or washed off, it'll stay for 4 years.
It could, yes.
And you have no idea how gunshot primer residue ended up on that garment, correct?
I cannot tell you how it got there.
Okay. Or when it got there.
Or when it got there.
Or whether it was being worn when it got there, whether it was being worn inside out when it was deposited on there, or whether it was laid on top of a gun, for example.
I cannot tell you any of those scenarios.
Okay. So Mr. Randolph Murdaugh, are you aware that this rain jacket was found in a closet in September of 2021 at Mr. Randolph Murdaugh's home?
That was the information that was on the submission, yes.
And he died, I think, on June 10th, 2021. Were you aware of that?
I remember hearing news about it.
But if he, before he got into his truck, had taken off this poncho and flipped it over and threw it on the back seat of his truck where he kept his shotgun bow whoop, and it laid on top of this dirty old shotgun, it could have deposited 38 particles of gunshot primer residue, right?
If the shotgun was not clean, there is a potential for the transfer off of that shotgun, yes.
And if if bow whoop hadn't been cleaned in years, there would be
No objection. What's he saying?
bow whoop, B-O-W-H-O-O-P, the name of Mr. Randolph Murdaugh's shotgun. If that shotgun hadn't been cleaned in years, it'd be more likely you would get gunshot residue deposited on anything that came on top of it, right?
The transfer would be more likely, yes, sir.
Now, you also testified that 38 particles of gunshot primer residue was a significant amount.
Yes,
Remember
sir.
saying that?
Yes, sir.
So I guess then you would agree with me that one particle on the hand is an insignificant amount.
I can just say that it was present. I can't tell you that it's insignificant. It's just there.
Yet you can say 38 is significant.
Because it's much more than you would expect on an item that wasn't in the vicinity or didn't come into contact with an object with gunshot primer residue on it. One particle, I can't tell you when or how or it got there.
Well, would you agree with 3 particles on a shirt is an insignificant amount?
It's just 3 particles on a shirt, and it can be one of the 2 ways or a combination of the 2 ways of being in the vicinity or transfer.
Yet you're comfortable saying 38 is significant, but you're not comfortable saying 1 is insignificant.
Insignificant implies that the evidence itself is insignificant, but it's a particle of gunshot primer residue. I'm not going to say that it's insignificant evidence.
Well, should you say 38 is significant, or do you say there's 38 particles on there?
Significant implying that it's a large amount, not that it's a small amount, but a large amount.
So is 3 a small amount?
Not in how many that we get normally. It's about average.
Okay. Now, in addition to the rain jacket, and I think that is item 173 in your lab, you were also provided a blue tarp, item 174. Do you remember receiving a blue tarp?
Yes, sir.
And after discussing the scenario presented by the witness with Captain Ryan Neal, you and he decided that there was no need to process the blue tarp seized from Almeida, correct?
Correct.
And are you aware that this witness was Shelley Smith?
I am now. I was not aware who the witness was at the time.
So in your conversation with Agent Ryan Neal, he says, don't worry about the tarp.
Objection to hearsay.
The objection is sustained.
After your conversation with Ryan Neal about what a witness had relayed to him, you, in consultation with Agent Neal, decided not to test the tarp.
That's correct. That was based on that the raincoat was balled up in a closet versus the tarp being folded in a container and in place in a location.
When you say balled up, what do you mean?
I wasn't there, so I don't know, but that was the information. It was haphazardly placed in the bottom of the closet.
Okay. If it had been folded and placed on top of some other items in the closet, would that have made a difference to you?
I'm not sure. That would have had to have been a discussion between the agents and my management.
Have you seen all the photos of the search warrant where it was found and how it was folded or not folded, balled or not balled?
I've seen one photo.
The one that's in evidence here?
I'm not sure.
You were informed from Agent Neal that, or you concluded that the supposition was that the firearm was in contact with the rain jacket, correct?
I'm sorry?
You documented that the supposition was that the firearm was in contact with the rain jacket.
They were trying to determine, I think, whether a firearm was in contact with the rain jacket, and that was a possibility given my results. Now,
you, so you remember what you did with the blue tarp? You put it in storage and it's never been taken out again, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, I don't know what happened to the blue tarp.
Did you ever have any involvement with the blue tarp after it was presented to your evidence lab?
No, I did not.
The rain jacket do you know if fingerprints were taken off the rain jacket?
I don't know of any other analyses performed on the rain jacket.
Would you have been able to tell if there had been lifts for fingerprints when it came to you?
For gunshot primer residue evidence, the trace lab always gets it first because any other processes might remove the gunshot primer residue. So no other analyses would have taken place prior to ours.
The rain jacket was slated, I believe you testified, for further DNA analysis.
That was what was on the outside of the box. Yes, sir.
And because of that, you and Agent Jamie Hall wore gloves and a gown and a mask, right?
We always wear gloves and the lab jacket, but the mask was added because of the DNA request.
Do you know the results of the DNA analysis?
I do not.
You were shown photos that were introduced in the evidence and of the rain jacket. And I just want to publish two more that were introduced in evidence. 438. Doug, can you put 438 on the screen, please? I think you had it, now it's gone. There we go. Agent Fletcher, can you see that?
I can.
What's that?
This is a page out of my case file that I prepared for my technical reviewer and as part of my information to keep with me. It's a picture of the packaging, the paper bag that the rain jacket was included in, with the documentation on it, as well as the tag from the rain jacket labeling the brand of it, the size of it, and it also has our lab net information and the initials and date in which it was analyzed by the Trace Department.
Okay, the bottom of this, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a date of 10/8/2021. Is that when you took the photo?
No, sir, that's when I prepared the PowerPoint for inclusion in my case file.
I see. So Doug, if you'll go to the next exhibit, 439, please. And there you've labeled manufacturer's tags. You see that?
Yes, sir.
You tell the jury what size this rain jacket is.
It's a large.
Okay. And do you know this brand name? Kokata?
I had to look it up. I wasn't familiar with it prior to this case.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Doug. Can you take that down, please? One second, Your Honor, please. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Good morning.
Mr. Griffin asked you about 38 particles on the parka, poncho, rain jacket, the blue garment.
Yes, sir.
You asked about the 38 particles. That's what I'm responding to.
Yeah, we just can't hear you.
Okay, well, I'll talk louder, sorry. Actually, how many particles were on the garment?
In total, there were 52 particles. There were 14 that I confirmed on the outside of the rain jacket, and there were 38 on the interior of the rain jacket.
And I confused myself yesterday. There were 13 particle lifts and 12 particle lifts, correct? And then out of that, you found the 52 particle characteristics of gunshot primer residue, correct?
That's correct.
And 38 of those were on the inside?
Yes, sir.
That's what he asked you about. 14 were on the outside.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when you wear that garment, do you typically wear it inside's inside? Is that what it means?
I would think so.
Yeah. And he asked you, is it a possibility that a firearm had come in contact with the rain jacket? And you said it's possible, it's really possible, isn't it? I mean, those numbers are unusual, aren't they? 38.
For the interior of a garment, I would think that they were unusual, yes.
And that's common sense, isn't it?
Well, they're just not.
What is it? I'm sorry. How do you describe that in your world, everyday living, and in your examining it? How do you describe those particles inside of a garment that you're supposed to wear with the outside?
Well, typically, people wear their clothing right side out. And so if they're in the vicinity to the discharge of a shooting, that's where the particles are going to land.
On the outside?
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Griffin asked you about, I think, a hypothetical if Scranton's father's gun had laid on it and it was in a truck, would the 38 particles inside of the rain jacket be consistent with a recently fired firearm being contained inside?
It could be, yes.
With a recently fired firearm being carried inside of that rain jacket?
Just inside the rain jacket. I don't know that it matters if you're carrying it.
Okay, right. You're very technical and precise. Okay. But if you were carrying it and you had a gun inside that rain jacket that had recently been fired, and you were taking it somewhere to hide it or transport it, would the 38 particles inside the rain jacket be consistent with transfer from a recently fired firearm?
That is a possibility, yes, sir.
And again, how did you describe those 38 particles in your world?
They're unusual because they're on the interior of a garment.
Go ahead.
And it is a large number.
Unusual because they're on the interior of a garment, and an unusual number.
Well, a large number.
Object.
The last answer for the record was a large number.
Yes, sir.
Further examination.
Very, very briefly, Agent Fletcher, what I gather, there's just a whole lot of possibilities of what could have happened, right?
That's correct.
The only thing you can tell us is what you saw under a microscope.
Yes, sir.
You can't tell the jury how it got there, right?
That's correct.
Or when it got there.
That's correct.
And, okay, and I forgot to ask one further question. A rimfire gun, does it produce gunshot primer residue?
Rimfire ammunition does produce gunshot primer residue. Some don't produce the traditional lead, barium, and antimony. Others do. It just depends on what type of ammunition is used.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls Annette Griswold.
We'll have a seat on the witness stand.
My name is Annette Griswold, Griswold.
Ms. Griswold, how are you doing today?
I'm doing okay, thank you.
Good. If you would just tell the jury a little bit about yourself, where you grew up and what you do for a living, please.
Okay. I grew up in Hampton, South Carolina, and lived there for the first 18 years of my life, graduated from Wade Hampton High School, went away for college at 18, ended up falling in love with the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Over the next 2 decades, I spent most of that time in Charlotte. That's where I got married. And with the exception of a few years coming back to Hampton and a few years in Columbia for my husband to get his degree, that time was spent in Charlotte until 2012. My dad took ill and he wanted us to move closer to be near him, and my mom needed help taking care of him. So I moved home in 2012 after my father passed away. A few months after, I went back on the job search, and I'd been out of work for 2 months helping my mom. So I was looking for a job and ran into my friend's father, and he told me I should probably check the law firm. I found out that I had a school friend that worked there, so I reached out to her, sent her my resume, and she forwarded it to the right people. And 3 interviews later, I was working for the firm, and I worked as a paralegal and was hired to work for Alex Murdaugh.
Which firm are we talking about?
What everybody refers to as PMPED.
Okay. And when did you start working there?
July of 2012.
And when you started working there, who were you working for?
Alex Murdaugh.
And the entirety of the time that you were there up until the time that he was no longer a partner of that firm, is that who you worked for?
That's correct.
So how long was that?
That was a little over 9 years.
Were you the only staff member that he had that was assigned to him?
No, we have, there's 2 of us that work for Alex. I'd been with him, like I said, the 9 years. And then the other secretary was Christy Gerald, and she had been with him about almost double of what I'd been there.
Quickly describe for me sort of the division of labor between you and Christy Gerald, please.
I was hired to handle more of the larger cases that Alex had. where it's litigation law, and so it's personal injury for the most part, workers' comp, medical malpractice, premises liability, product liability, wrongful death, trucking cases. And so he wanted me to take over those bigger cases and handle those. And then Christy did more of the day-to-day stuff and the smaller files. Still just as important, but just smaller files than the larger ones.
You had the more complex stuff?
I did.
The bigger cases?
Yes, sir.
Just quickly, how was the defendant as a boss and a lawyer? Just what were his typical work habits, and what was he like in the office?
Extremely intelligent when it comes to the law. I respected and admired that in him greatly. He didn't keep normal hours. He liked to float in later in the late morning time or early afternoon. We always had a running joke. We never knew. We knew that he might not be there all day, but he would always show up right before 5 o'clock when we were ready to leave. So just, kept unset hours. Pretty, I sometimes referred to Alec as a Tasmanian devil, because when he walked in, no matter what you were doing, you were started spinning, because he was just coming through and, shouting everybody's name and ready to get work done when he was walking in the door. So it was kind of confusing.
Let me ask you just a little bit. The jury's heard some testimony about disbursement sheets and how they work. And can you just remind them very quickly how that works? Who prepares the disbursement sheets, and how does that go about taking place?
After I find out that a case is settled, I go ahead and start getting my disbursement sheet ready, where I can kind of go ahead and expect what the deductions are that are going to come out of it. The attorney's fees, the expenses. Anytime you have Medicare or any health insurance, there's typically a lien on that money, and we are required by law to pay it back. So I go ahead and start looking into all that, draft the sheet, and get everything on it that I know that I'm aware of. And then it goes to Alec, and he makes any changes he needs to. And then he would sign, once he signs off on it, I send it across to our accounts payable department, and they cut the checks.
Are you familiar with what is generally referred to as the boat case?
I am.
And that is the boat wreck that occurred around February of 2019?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that the defendant was sued civilly in that particular case?
Yes, sir.
After the boat case happened, did you notice any change in the defendant's demeanor around the office and about his work habits?
I did. He was more distant. Even when he was in the office, he was absent. It was he's always been hard to sit still and get answers from, and to sign our documents and anything that we had put in his office to sign. But it got extremely worse after the boat accident. He was rarely there, and when he was, the door was closed, and it was almost impossible for us to reach him. He was always on his phone. He was always dealing with something bigger than what we had going on.
As time moved on into the early part of 2021, did that even get worse?
It did. He would come in lots of times, and he was just not his normal self, or what his normal self used to be. It was just very tense, and I don't know how to describe it. It's just, you could tell that it was the boat crash was weighing heavy on him, and it was consuming his life almost, it seemed like. And he was just harder to reach. And there was a couple instances where I referred to him as having his ass on his shoulders, because that's how I felt. It was disrespectful of me to feel that way and to say that out loud, but that's how I felt, because he just wasn't himself with us anymore. He came in, and it was just like, yelled our names and just didn't treat us the same way he did prior to the boat accident.
Was the defendant very protective about anyone going into his office?
He was. There was often times where he would come in on a Monday and say, "Who's been in my office?" And we'd be like, "I don't know, probably the cleaning ladies." We have no idea. He was, it was very cluttered, very unorganized, but he said he knew where his stuff was, that it was organized in his way.
Jury's heard a lot of testimony about this, and just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask it this way. Over the years, in various cases, did the defendant ask you to put disbursements to Forge on various disbursement sheets so that settlement checks would be prepared from the trust account laid out that way?
Yes, sir, he did. I can't remember when it started, but he told me, to put it on Forge. And me knowing Forge Consulting was a legitimate company, I would, on the disbursement sheet, I would put Forge Consulting. And he would say, no, it's not Forge Consulting. If I wanted to be Forge Consulting, I would have told you Forge Consulting. I want it to be Forge. And I was like, well, I don't understand. Isn't the name of the company Forge Consulting? And he told me that he described it to me. He said, think of it like Forge Consulting is the large company and Forge is a kind of under that umbrella of it. So he said, Forge Consulting is the big name. And then you have all different things they do, including Forge, which is more like a savings account than a trust.
So he would actually get you to change it from Forge Consulting to just Forge.
Correct. Even when across the street at the accounts payable department, they would write the check out to Forge Consulting. Lots of times I would have to reach out to them and say, hey, you wrote this to Forge Consulting. He says it needs to be forged. And so lots of times they would have to change that.
Those checks that he would have on disbursement sheets to get cut, made out to Forge, would he often talk to you about picking those up personally?
Yes, I would ask him if I could go ahead and mail it to Michael Gunn at Forge Consulting because he was our contact. And he would say, no, you know what? I'm seeing Gunn this weekend. He's coming out to the farm, or we're going to meet halfway tonight and have dinner. He always said that he was going to hand deliver it. So I even got to where I would make file notes in my files. Alec took check to hand deliver because I was so worried that he was going to lose these checks because he was, a little aloof sometimes and, would leave keys in his vehicle, would misplace a few things. And so I was so worried that these checks were going to get lost and then we would have to do a stop payment and reissue the check. So I started making notes where I would remember that I didn't mail it, that it was actually hand delivered.
Well, hand delivered, at least from who was telling you it was going to be.
That's correct. Yes.
Who was saying that?
Alec was.
All right. When you're talking about the defendant or Alex Murdaugh, do you see him here in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point him out to the jury, please?
Yes, he's over in it looks like a navy blue jacket.
Your Honor, can the record reflect these sheets identify the defendant? You mentioned he would say that, I'm going to see Gunn, I'm meeting him halfway, we're going hunting, things like that. Tell the jury again, who's Michael Gunn?
Michael Gunn he's our contact. He's the person we talk to when it comes to trust annuities with Forge Consulting.
And that's the real Forge, correct?
That's correct.
Not the fake Forge.
Not the fake Forge.
Moving into the latter part of 2020, did you have any particular issue arise with a disbursement to Forge that caught your attention?
I did.
Tell me about that if you would.
I was currently working from home. I'd had surgery on Halloween of 2020, and I was working from home, hadn't come back yet. I was planned to come back to the office the following Monday. And on that day, I believe it was December 15th of 2020, I got a phone call from the accounts payable department. Nicole called me, and she's one of the ladies that cuts the checks and works for Jeannie Seckinger. And she told me that she had just got a disbursement sheet over, that Christy had sent over a disbursement sheet in one of my files. It made no sense. She didn't understand it. And I was confused too, because I was like, why didn't he contact me to do my disbursement? Because I'm kind of protective over my files. If I've worked that file the whole time, I want to finish that file. I want to work the whole process of it. And actually the disbursement part is my favorite part of the file, because I want to be able to have that, be there when that client gets their money and gets that closure that they deserve. So I thought it was very odd that Christy was drafting a disbursement in one of my files, and
this was the day you were off work.
That's correct. I was working from home, and I still could have been reached, but I wasn't until Nicole reached out to me and told me.
Keep going.
She told me, so she sends it to me by email or text, I can't remember, and I reviewed it, and it didn't make sense to me either. There was a line on it that said, the attorney fees were going, or amount of it was going to Forge, and I didn't understand how that was happening. And I'd never seen him send attorney fees to Forge before, and so I didn't know that that was even a possibility. And so I called the office, and Christy transferred me to Alec, and I spoke to him and asked him about it. And he said, why did Nicole call you? And I said, well, she doesn't know how to write these checks out because it doesn't make sense to her. She hasn't ever seen a disbursement like this. And he said, I'll take care of it. And so he said, I'll call Nicole, I'll take care of it. And so I remember talking to Nicole later and say, so what did he say? What was the reason behind it? And she said, he said that they can structure their attorney fees, and that's what that check was for.
Did you have a subsequent discussion with the defendant about that?
I did, and he told me the same thing. He said it was something that they've been able to do forever. He just never took advantage of it before, and so now he decided that he was going to start structuring those attorney fees where it would make have interest drawn. And so it made sense, because why not? Why not, instead of having that money sit somewhere, put it somewhere where it's going to draw more money?
His explanation to you made sense.
Yes, it did.
On its face.
Yes.
You remember the name of that case?
That was the Hirschberger case.
I'm going to show you. Stand by. We'll show you what's already been admitted to evidence that states 429 and see if you recognize this document.
Yes, I do. This is the disbursement that was in December of 2020 that I was talking about.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Put it up on the screen. At that point in time, we're in December of 2020, is that right?
That's correct.
After the defendant gave you that explanation that seemed valid to you on your face, did that matter just kind of go away at that point in time?
It did. It was kind of, always at the back of my mind, because I still felt like there should have been some kind of paper trail. But yeah, the explanation worked that he gave me. And so I was trying to just go along with it because I thought it was valid.
As we move on into January 2021, did another incident happen that came to your attention as related to disbursements?
Yes. The end of January, it was a Friday afternoon. I left early that day to take my mom to the eye doctor, and kind of the same scenario of kind of an exact repeat of December happened again. Nicole from Accounts Payable called me, and I said, what's going on? And she said, well, I've got another one. And so Christy had drafted a disbursement in a case referred to as Moore. And she had sent it over. And once again, it had the same wording and kind of confusion that the Hirschberger one had a month previous. So she didn't really understand it again. She was still trying to say, I feel like we need more information on this. And I said, I do too. And so kind of the same scenario as before, I reached out to Alec, he reached out to Nicole, and ultimately the checks got written. But it was the same scenario. As you can see on here, the $91,867.50 was attorney fees that were structured that went straight to Forge, to the fake, what we now know was the fake Forge.
All right. And is that still in the Hirschberger matter you're talking
That's
about?
the Hirschberger one. And on the Thomas More one,
We'll get there in a second.
Okay.
When you got that call, do you remember where you were, the second call?
Yeah, the Thomas More, I was at the eye doctor with my mom.
All right, I'm still on Hirschberger. Do you remember where you were on that?
Oh, I was home. I'd had surgery and I was home recovering.
And I'm going to show you this, and we're still in the same exhibit, that being 429. Do you recognize that at all? Let me hand this exhibit to you. Probably easier that way. just take a flip through it, if you would, please.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is what we refer to now as the second Hirschberger disbursement. It was on the UIM portion of the case and liability portion. So once again, the PMP attorney's fees were routed to Forge in the amount of $83,333.33.
All right, you had started to talk about Thomas More. Is that another incident that came to your attention as we're moving into early 2021?
Yes, sir. That one, like I said, was at the end of January. Once again, I was out of the office. I was at an eye doctor with my appointment with my mom. Got the call from Nicole. She said it's the same scenario. But this time it was all the funds that was in client's trust, which was $125,000, I believe, and all those funds were being routed. That was attorney fees and client money that was being routed to the fake Forge.
And this was another one of your cases, is that right?
It was. So another situation where I'm out of the office. It's almost 5 o'clock in the afternoon on a Friday. Christy drafts the disbursement. Alex signs it. They send it over in my absence.
When these instances are happening that you're describing to the jury where you happen to be out of the office, and these are your cases, right?
That's correct.
And all of a sudden you're getting communications that the defendant is having Christy draft some disbursements. In any of these cases, was there anything going on that something happened and had to be done that very day that you just happened to be out of the office?
I didn't think so because in particular, the Thomas More case, we were working on the third party portion of the case, but there was also a workers' comp portion that another attorney was working on. And when you're working on a workers' comp case, if you settle the third party first, you can't disperse it until the workers' comp portion is taken care of, because workers' comp always has a huge lien that you have to negotiate for the client. So the money was supposed to sit there. It was my understanding it would probably be sitting there another year until the workers' comp portion of the case was settled. So those funds didn't need to go anywhere. So it was very odd that all of a sudden they're all sent to Forge because they were supposed to remain in the account, was my understanding.
Do you take pride in the work that you do on these complex cases?
I do.
Do you know your cases very well?
I'd say I do.
And was there any reason of which you were aware that things had to be happening the day that they were?
I did. No, it definitely put up another yellow flag, and it made me think about the previous one that happened in Hirschberger in December, because both of them were kind of the same scenarios. Me out of the office, someone else drafting it. And not that we can't work in each other's files. We can, but it's easy to miss something if it's not your file. If I had to go in somebody else's file and draft a disbursement, I may not know that there's a lien or a certain promised medical bill or anything else that needs to be paid. So that's why, to me, it's easier if somebody that's worked the case actually drafts the disbursement, because they know all the deductions that have to come out.
Was the defendant using the opportunity of you being out of the office to push these things through?
Yes, in hindsight, it was easy to see that the chaos, the sending it over at 10 minutes before 5 p.m. was kind of a way of part of that little hurricane, a little tornado portion. Just sending it over when most people are gone, and it's just going to get done quickly and no questions asked.
You said that the Thomas More line was particularly unusual because it was workers' comp and those funds couldn't be dispersed yet, correct? To your understanding?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have a conversation with the defendant about why these funds were dispersed?
I did, and he explained to me that he had gotten permission that since the money was going to be sitting there another year, that they were going to send it to Forge and let it draw interest, and then that would be money that would draw interest on for the client as well as the firm, because it was both portions of the money.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted into evidence. It states 328. See if you recognize this document.
Yes, this is the Thomas More disbursement that I'm referring to, where the entire client trust amount of $125,000
Do you recognize the signature down at the bottom of the page?
I do. Alex signed it where it says R. Alexander Murdaugh. And then where the client's signature is, that is not the client's signature. It's Alex handwriting.
You recognize this handwriting from working for him for 9 years?
I do.
Did the defendant have a case going on around this time involving Mack trucks?
He did what we refer to as the Ferris case. We actually went to Columbia and had a bench trial in that case in January of 21.
And did you work on that case to some extent?
I did.
Was that one of the ones assigned to you?
Yes.
Was the defendant the only lawyer on that case, or were there other lawyers?
No, there was 2 co-counsels that had brought us in. Wayne Ridgway was the first attorney that received that case. He reached out to Chris Wilson's office, and Chris joined the case as well. And then Chris reached out to our firm, and so now there's a third attorney, which was Alec, involved in it.
Ultimately, was that case tried before a judge?
It was bench trial, like I said, in January of 2021.
And did the judge issue a verdict in favor of the firm's clients?
Did, yes, sir. And the next month, I think sometime in February, we got a very nice verdict for the clients.
Who was going to be dispersing the fees in that once the money came in? Was that going to be PMPED, or was it going to be the other attorney's
Chris
firm?
Wilson's office.
Had the firm PMPED, had it accrued costs in the course of that litigation?
Yes.
Expenses?
Yes,
And did you prepare those and send those to Chris Wilson's office, or how did that work?
I did. I put the totals in an email and sent them to, Alec wanted me to send him the totals by email, and so that's what I did. And then I guess he sent them to Chris after that.
All right. And then after that happened, do you remember what month the money came in, roughly?
In May.
Well, let me slow you down. Once you've done that, when the money comes in, you said Chris Wilson's office is going to be handling that disbursement, correct?
Correct.
What are you expecting to happen next?
I'm expecting copies of the settlement paperwork, copies of the disbursement sheets signed by the client, and I'm expecting 2 fee checks and 2 expense reimbursement checks, because there's 2 cases. It was a case for the deceased and a case for his wife. So I'm expecting 4 checks total.
And you're not saying I cut you off. You said something happened in May. Did something happen related to the Ferris case in May?
Yes, I received by mail the settlement package from Chris Wilson's office, but all it contained was a cover letter and the 2 expense reimbursement checks. So I emailed Vicki Lyman, which is Chris Wilson's secretary, and said something like, hey girl, I got these expense checks in. When can I expect the attorney fee checks? And she replied to my email telling me that, excuse me, hey friend, the attorney's got that money at disbursement. And I was really shocked because I didn't even know when the disbursement took place. I was never supplied copies of it or anything.
What's your thought when Vicki says that? What did you think may have happened?
Well, I called her and I said, you already gave the checks. I was like, I don't think we've received them. And she was like, yeah, they were done at disbursement in March. And so I asked her first to send me over copies of the disbursement sheets and where I could look at those. And then I reached out across to our accounts payable just to make sure that checks somehow bypassed me and went straight to into the client trust, to their department. And they told me no, that they didn't have any such checks on the books either. And I was like, okay. So I assumed that they gave Alec the checks and he's lost them. They're misplaced. They're somewhere in his truck. They're somewhere in a file folder stuck and just kind of hid away and he's forgotten to give them to me.
Did you say that, Vicki? Like, come on, why'd you give them to my boss?
Why? I said, why would you do that? I was like, why would you give checks to the attorney? Why wouldn't you send them straight to me where I can get them deposited?
I'm going to put States 312 that's already in evidence, and this is the page marked date stamp 2371 for the record up on the screen. Can you see that on your little screen? Do I need to bring that in?
I can see it.
And can you tell the jury what that is?
That is the email I was talking about where I told her I just got the expenses, but where's the fee? And she says it's because your boss and mine and Liz's got their fees once they were signed. Duh.
Did you have a conversation with Alec at this point, or what did you do next?
I did.
So you called the finance in your own firm and said, hey, did we get this check? And they
Correct.
said no.
They said no. And so I verified that. And then I asked Vicki, I said, are you positive? And she said, yes. And I was like, okay, I'll go see if he remembers where they're at. So he happened to be in the office by that time. His door was closed. I went in, he was on the phone, and I kind of kept checking and going back. Eventually I got to speak to him, and he was still kind of on the phone, but he was like, no, I didn't get those checks. And I was like, are you sure? And he said, yeah. And I was kind of back and forth. And I'm like, he said he didn't get them. Are you sure? And this kind of went back and forth for a few minutes, and over the course of the rest of the day. And I said, hey, he just told me that Chris was still holding those funds in trust. I was like, I don't understand. You say that they've been cut. I was like, can you send me copies of stuff? Because I don't see anything. And he's telling me their funds are in trust. And she was like, Annette, I know for a fact that the checks are cut. There is no money in trust. And the reason I know that is because when the checks were written to Alec, I knew it was a bit odd because they were written to Richard. They were written out to him personally instead of the firm. And I said,
they were written out to him personally instead of the firm.
Correct.
Why did that stick out in her mind? Why did that stick out in your mind?
Because common sense tells me that the attorney fees belong to the firm, where the firm, I don't know, I didn't understand the complete breakdown until Jeannie went over it in her testimony, but I knew by common sense that the funds belong to the firm. And then once they do whatever percentages and everything they need to do, then the attorney gets his portion later. So I knew it wasn't right, that it shouldn't have never gone to an individual attorney. It should go to the firm as a whole.
That's all there is, honey.
When you asked the defendant, said, hey, Vicki says you already got those, and he tells you what?
He told me that Chris was holding that money in trust, that it had not been dispersed yet.
Did he tell you Vicki's wrong?
Yeah, he told me Vicki's wrong. I don't care what she's telling you, she's wrong.
What was his demeanor when you were inquiring,
Just kind of like, just shooing me out of his office. Like, I don't have time for this.
After Vicki tells you that it was odd because the checks had been made out to the defendant personally instead of the law firm, what did you do next?
I asked her, I said, are you sure? And she said, yes. And she said, yeah, it was written out to him. Well, first I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And I made her repeat it to make sure I heard correctly. And she was like, and then kind of while she was saying it out loud, I think it kind of registered to her, oh, wait, that probably wasn't the right thing to do. Because she kind of hushed after that and didn't want to talk and kind of wanted to get off the phone with me. And so I still kind of tried to question Alec over the next couple of days and tried to get a reasonable explanation of what was going on, because in my mind, I'm still hoping he just lost the checks and this was all just a misunderstanding. But at the back of my mind, there's this huge red flag telling me this is not right. What is going on?
Did you eventually take this issue to anyone else since you couldn't get an answer about it?
Yes. I eventually, I don't know the exact date, but I eventually emailed Jeannie Seconder and asked her if she was in the office because I really needed to speak to her. And she said she would be back later that day. And so I went into her office and I had everything printed out and kind of showed her and told her my concerns. And she was instantly on, on high alert as well, because, it didn't look good. We were still both hoping that it was a misunderstanding, just this one-off, something silly that happened, but we both had that nagging feeling of this is not good. Something is definitely wrong.
Did Jeannie instruct you to do anything?
She did not. She said that she would talk to him about it, and she kept the paperwork that I gave her.
Were you ever asked to send another email to Vicky asking for particular documents?
Yeah, actually, it was kind of my idea. I kind of told Jeannie, I was like, hey, why don't we do this? Why don't you send me an email telling me what we need, and then I'll forward that email from myself, and to see if we can get copies of everything where we can figure all this out and eliminate it. Because at this point, we want to prove that suspicion we had was wrong and that everything's really okay. So she did. She forwarded me an email, and
I'm still on states 312. What's been date stamped is 2374. And is this the email that you just described that Jeannie forwarded to you requesting the documentation for the Ferris fees?
It is underneath where, Jeannie texts there or emails there and tells me exactly what she needs and kind of is very specific.
At what time, what date was that? I'm sorry.
That was May 27th at 11:40 a.m.
All right. And then going over to 2373 in the same exhibit, is this the email right here that you then forwarded to Vicky Lyman at Chris Wilson's office?
Yes, it was. I forwarded that email that Jeannie sent me on the same day, May 27th. And I knew she was on vacation, but I went ahead and sent this to her. And then when I knew she had time to get back from vacation, I sent this follow up on the strand on June 2nd and requesting it again.
All right. And did you get a response email from Vicky Lyman and Chris Wilson's office?
Yeah, she said she didn't, this doesn't involve her, and she said she would forward it to Chris. And we were basically just asking for copies of everything where we could clear this matter up. And, like I said, we wanted our suspicion to be wrong.
That item already in evidence?
We'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 440 to your testimony. And again, just tell me, first of all, just if without going into any content, whether or not you recognize that particular document.
I do. It's a text strand between myself and Vicky Lyman.
And is this, what is the date on that particular text strand?
June 2nd, and then it runs into June 3rd.
And is that 2021?
Yes, I'm sorry, 2021.
And is this a text thread where y'all are discussing the things that you described here today?
Yeah, I told her I just, don't mention anything.
Hold on just real quick.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Y'all are describing what we're talking about here today?
That is correct.
All right, Your Honor, this time I would move stakes 440 into evidence.
Your Honor, object on hearsay grounds. It doesn't fall within an exception to the hearsay rule.
See the document.
Yes, sir.
Spike, she didn't do anything to you.
I sustain the objection.
Did you ultimately text Vicky on that particular day?
I did. I told her that I gave her time to get back from vacation, and I just basically texted her with my concerns and told her how stressed out I had been over this situation and how I was hoping my suspicion was wrong, but I was really stressed out. And unfortunately, my daughter, me and Vicky had talked on the phone. Vicky had called me as well, and unfortunately, my daughter had overheard me too. So she instantly got like really worried for me. And my daughter said, Mom, you need to go ahead and get your resume because once you turn all this in, they may fire you.
All
So
right.
she was very concerned for me.
And this latest email on the screen, that was June 2nd, 2021. Is that
That's
correct?
correct.
You recall June 7th, 2021?
I do.
Was that a Monday?
It was.
Were you at work that day?
I was.
Did the defendant come to work that day?
He did. He came in probably around lunchtime. I can't remember if he came in before lunch or after, but somewhere in that time frame.
Did you see Jeannie Seconder that day?
I did. Jeannie had already told me that she was going to talk to Alec about the Ferris e-checks that were missing. She was going to go and talk to him about them that day. And so she asked me to let her know when he got into the office. So when he got to the office, I reached out to her to let her know.
And did she come up to your area?
She did. And we have open style offices, no doors on the secretary's offices. So she had to pass by me to get Alec's office. So I saw her when she was walking past.
Did she give you any look when she walked past?
She did. It was kind of just like that, just kind of a raised eyebrow, like wish me luck, here goes nothing kind of look. Like, I hope, because we were both just, like I said, wanting to get answers and
Get answers about what?
about those missing checks and figure out what was going on.
Where did she go after she gave you that look?
I heard Alec's doors closed, so I assumed in his office to talk to him.
This is what day?
This is June 7th, 2021.
Did she come out after?
She did, and she didn't stop. She just hurried by my desk and she went on about her business.
Did you have any conversation yourself about the Ferris fees with the defendant that day?
Don't recall having any discussion with him on that day. At that point, I'd turned, Jeannie had everything and it was kind of in her hands.
What time do you think you left work that day?
I left at 5:15 that day.
Is that your normal time?
It's not. I typically work later. Alec always tend to work nights, and me and Christy tend to kind of adapt to his schedule a little bit and work a little later than 5 o'clock. Most of the time we were there till 5:30, 6 o'clock.
When you left the office on June 7th, 2021 at 5:15, was the defendant still there?
He was.
Did you go home? Eventually went home?
Yes.
Just a normal night?
Yeah, I went straight home that night.
Did that change at some point?
Yes, definitely. My phone was on silence and I slept through a bunch of text messages and calls. I woke up in the middle of the night and my phone was just full and I was like, what is going on? And so I'm looking through the text messages. They don't make a lot of sense. I see I have a voicemail message from Randy Murdaugh. And so I checked the voicemail and I could tell he was upset and crying. And he said, Annette, please call me when you can. It doesn't matter what time. And so I don't remember what time it was, but it was sometime in the middle of the night and I called him. And he told me, well, when he answered the phone, he was upset, obviously. And I said, Randy, what's wrong? And he said, it's bad, Annette. It's real bad. And I said, oh no, Mr. Randolph passed. And he said, no, it's not Dad. It's Maggie and Paul. And I said, what? And he said, they've been shot and murdered. And I said, what? And it was very overwhelming. We both cried on the phone with each other. And obviously the first thing I did was say, oh my God, how is Alec? How is he? Is he okay? Where's Buster? Is Buster okay? I was very concerned. I had a million thoughts running in my head. I was like, are you guys safe? Is this something aimed at the entire family? And I was very, very worried about Alec and Buster and Randy and his family and the entire Murdaugh family. So it was very overwhelming.
Over the 9 years of working closely for the defendant, did you also get to know his family, Maggie and Paul and Buster?
I did.
Is this firm pretty tight knit?
Yes.
What was the reaction of the people in the firm to this terrible news?
There was two reactions. First was scared. We were like, please lock our doors. We're scared. Who is this aimed at? Is it a client retaliating? Is it, aimed at Alec? Is it aimed at the firm? We didn't know. We just had so many questions, no answers, a million thoughts running through our heads. We were just there, supporting each other and helping one another through this grieving process. And at the same time, we were very protective over Alec and Randy. We wouldn't let them leave the office if strange cars were driving around. We would say, don't walk out yet. There's a white car that's went around 3 times. I mean, we were in complete mama bear mode. We didn't want them to go out and have to talk to reporters. We didn't want them to have to run out and run into anybody. And we were scared for them. We were very protective. I mean, anything suspicious out the window, we were on high alert.
Said, what kind of mode?
Mama bear mode.
Mama bear protecting who?
Protecting Alec and Randy.
Did the law firm community rally to the aid of the defendant?
They did.
Was that the primary focus on everybody's mind in the aftermath?
Absolutely.
Were you at all concerned about finding out what happened to these Ferris fees after that happened?
What Ferris fees?
What Ferris fees?
Yeah, what Ferris fees? That was the furthest thing on my mind.
In fact, was that the last time you really thought about it in any aspect until September of 2021?
It is, yes, sir.
And you were more focused on helping this defendant and his family in the aftermath of this tragedy that had happened.
Yes. And everybody was so supportive. I mean, some of the associate attorneys stepped up and they came up to me and Christy and said, hey, if you need anything over the next few weeks, you need us to review a file for you, get something else, sign it and get it out the door. We're here for you guys 100%. So it wasn't, we were supportive. And then we had other folks in the office that were coming up to us, supporting us as well, because they knew we were at a standstill. What do we do? Because we knew obviously he was not going to be the same and not be himself for quite a while.
I asked you earlier about the boat case. Before the murders, when the boat case happened, had there been some reaction and backlash in the community against the defendant and his family after the boat case?
Yes, it was very difficult because Hampton being a small town, we all know each other and we all know both sides for the most part. For instance, Mallory Beach, her father is my first cousin. So Mallory Beach, I was kind of felt like I was in between a rock and a hard place because, her family is, beyond heartbroken over the loss of her. And I know some of them didn't like the idea that I was still working at the firm, but I was still, to me, it was two separate entities. This is my job. This was my family. And I had to keep them separate. I didn't want any part of the boat wreck case. I didn't want to know any details or anything because, like I said, I was keeping my family life and my work life separate.
After the murders, you said the law firm community, though, rallied to Alex's aid, correct?
Absolutely. Everybody.
Did the larger community do as well?
Yes, they did.
After the murders?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that after those murders happened, what Ferris fees? They were the farthest thing from your mind, correct?
Yes, sir.
When did they come back to your attention?
September 2nd, it was a Thursday in the afternoon, and I was looking for a file in the file cabinet, and I was unable to locate it. And lots of times if, Alec's talking to a client on the phone, he'll yell for a file and we'll take it to him. So I was like, oh, it's probably in his office. So I went to his office to look for the file. And when I found it, I picked it up. And when I did, a check kind of floated like a feather to the ground. And when I bent over to pick it up, I saw the check and what it said and had on it, and I instantly became very upset because it happened to be one of the checks from the Ferris case that didn't exist.
And what did you see on the check that let you know that stuck out in your mind?
It was from Chris Wilson's office. It was written to Richard Alexander Murdaugh, and at the bottom it said Ferris fees. And it was dated March.
So what did you realize at that point?
I said, he's been lying this whole time. He had these funds. He lied to me. Oh, that feeling in the back of my mind was correct. Unfortunately, he did take these funds, because when I flipped the check over, I also saw that he had deposited by mobile deposit, and I can't remember if he signed the back of the check or if it just said mobile deposit only.
Let me show you Stage 313, see if you recognize that. It's already in evidence.
Yes, sir. That's the check that I found on September 2nd.
Right. And if you flick up one side and the other side.
Yeah, it's got his signature, Bank of America deposit only.
You recognize that writing as the defendant's?
Yes, it is.
When that check fluttered down, you picked it up?
I
You
did.
saw that? Where did you take it? Did you take it anywhere?
Yeah, I went back to my desk, and you can imagine all the emotions that I was feeling at this point. You know, I was hurt. I was angry. I just was beside myself, and I was a bit enraged too, because I asked him so many times. There were so many times that I felt like we could have clarified this and got it taken care of, but here it is from March to September, and I find this check that supposedly did not exist. And so I went to my desk, I called Jeannie, and I was like, I just found something. And she said, oh shit, what did you find? And I said, are you busy? And she said, come on over. And I went over and closed her door and threw the check at her. And she was like, is this one? I said, yeah, that's one of the Ferris checks that doesn't exist.
Was Jeannie doing anything else or start doing anything else when you came down with that check?
I didn't know it until I took her the check. But when I took her the check, she was like, yeah, I just ran a report yesterday. And she said, one of the attorneys is going to call Michael Gunn later today. And I said, well, what do you mean? And that's when she told me that she thinks there's some more stuff too. Back to my suspicion with Hirschberger and Thomas More, she pulled a report and she found out that we may have other issues of stolen funds. But I was not aware of any of that. I didn't know that she was looking into it again. I didn't know any of that until I took her the check, and she said she had just started doing stuff within the last few days.
Within a few days of this happening, what happened to the defendant's employment at the law firm?
He was fired the next day.
And did the law firm engage in a review process to determine the extent of any alleged?
Yes, we've had months upon months of going through all of the files and finding, just following the numbers and making notes on everything. And lots of hours, lots of manpower involved in this process of putting everything together, and just in awe of how much was happening, and we had no idea about it.
And without going through all the exhibits that were gone through with Jeannie Seckinger, but she was the one, or one of the central ones in doing that review. Is that correct?
Of course, yes.
And without going through each one, is a lot of those disbursements for the fake forge account, those were disbursements that the defendant told you to put on there?
That's correct.
Are those a lot of those disbursements one where he corrected you and said, no, don't put Forge Consulting, put Forge?
Yes, they were.
A lot of those checks, ones where he said, oh, I'm going to see Michael Gunn later. I'll take the check myself.
Yeah, they were all for him.
We'll show you what's been marked as Exhibit 441. Again, without going into the contents, tell me if you recognize that document.
Yes, it's a text message that Alex sent to me and Christy on September 26th when he was in 2021, when he was in rehab, is my understanding.
All right. Your Honor, this time I'd offer States 441 into evidence, I believe without objection.
No objection.
Submitted without objection.
Your Honor, I apologize. We do have the 403 objection and subject to the court prior ruling on this.
I haven't seen the exhibit, I don't.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll have you go to the jury room for a break. Please do not discuss the case. Yes, sir, Mr. Griffin.
Just preserving our prior objections on 404B evidence under 404B and 403. And it's nothing new. I just forgot to state no additional objections than what we've already had in this line of testimony, this is the same line of testimony of financial misconduct. That's all.
Mr. Waters.
And I just clarified, I think, with defense counsel that he was not adding a specific 403 objection to that. It's just the prior objection. However, this is a text from the defendant to this witness in this particular instance. Certainly, it can be read, and there's no hearsay issue because obviously it's a statement of a party opponent, and it certainly also is relevant because it can certainly be read in the nature of an admission to the various things that are at issue in these particular proceedings. And for that reason, there's certainly the probative value of an admission is certainly, I would argue, is the probative value of that is not substantially outweighed by the danger of any unfair prejudice.
It introduces another issue, the issue of drug use, and I think the witness testified that he was in rehab. Is that what you said? That he was in rehab and sent an email, and just want to be clear from the defense, the part of it, of the testimony that establishes through this witness that he was in rehab, that is not a basis for your objection.
We do have, yes, we do object to evidence of his drug use and to be included in this, and we would ask that that document be redacted to the extent it references rehab at this time.
It doesn't specifically mention drug use. So have you all review the exhibit and tell me if you have no objection based on the fact that he sent it while in rehab, then it's admissible as far as your prior bad acts objection.
We don't have any additional objections, Your Honor. We would, because this does raise an additional character issue, asked that the court. We ask that the court give, additional limiting instruction at some point in time.
How does the character in that he saying he's getting better, or what part addresses character?
Certainly he says I'm getting better every day, and I mean, that's clear from that he's in rehab. I mean, that's all.
All right, Mr. Waters.
Your Honor, I mean, he doesn't expressly say that. I would point out that the issue of pills has already come up a few times in this trial. I'm not trying to go there, but it is, when we talk about 404 and res geste, it is kind of part and parcel of a lot of things. I mean, even the defense is examined, I believe, Ms. Seconder on the issue of pills. And on top of that, we had Chris Wilson, who testified in camera, who will also testify here today. One of the things he says when he had that confrontation with the defendant on the the afternoon, I believe it was September 4th, that the defendant said, yeah, I've been stealing money and I've been hooked on pills for a while. So this is a bridge I think we have to cross at some point. The state is not trying to gild the lily with that, but at least, with these various witnesses, it is part of what they're being said. As far as that specific exhibit, though, Your Honor, there's no express reference to drugs or anything like that, and it certainly is in the nature of admission. And again, I think for that reason, it's very probative and very relevant and admissible for that reason.
Well, my concern obviously is that we do not, or that I do not allow testimony involving these admissions to bleed so far into the character 403 that it has the effect of undoing the 404 analysis. A lot of testimony has come in unobjected to that touches upon the defendant's character. That's why I want to be clear on what the objection is.
Your Honor, just from the state's perspective, we are trying to, walk that line. I mean, there's a lot of the financial stuff we're not even seeking to admit. I think that, we've limited it to things that had that connection that we discussed in camera. So, I'm not trying to gild the lily.
I'm not sure what that means.
That's a phrase I learned from Chief Justice Toll over the years. I guess that means, piling on, I guess, is a way to do that. And again, I don't have, we recognize the situation we're in and trying obviously not to get out over our skis from what the admissibility of that the court has already ruled on.
No. I'll ponder it while we take our break, and we'll be in recess for about 15 minutes. Ma'am, you may step down. Do not discuss your testimony. We can redact that portion if the defense does not wish. I find that it is admissible under Rule 801 by a party opponent. Yeah. However, the portion of it that says, when I get out of here is problematic. If the defense would like that portion of it redacted, that would suggest that he's in rehab, and when he gets out of here, he's going to do this or that. We can redact that portion. If the defense does not wish to have that portion redacted, the exhibit will come in its entirety.
Your Honor, here's where we find ourselves on the defense side. His drug addiction and drug use is frankly res geste to the alleged criminal conduct on the financial fraud. And it's hard for us on the defense side, and it didn't really get flushed out in our in-camera hearing because they didn't put evidence up of this, but it's something that we all knew. But it is part and parcel of the financial crimes. and it explains why he did what he did. And it does, in a way, pile on and make it even more prejudicial. And so when considering that, Your Honor, what we would ask is we want to renew our motion, object to all the financial crimes. Now that we know drug use is coming in the midst of it, because it is res gestae, it does tell the entire story. And we would ask the court to strike all the financial testimony the court's heard thus far, and let's proceed with a murder trial.
That motion is denied.
Thank you.
But the portion, the court admits this document and will redact that portion if requested by the defense. Do you want to redact the portion that suggests that he was in rehab? As it's part of the res gestae, it may even be part of your defense. I don't know. The state is offering evidence, and
we're not asking it to be redacted. We would request that whenever we get in these 404B witness testimony that the court provide a limiting instruction. Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to give a limiting instruction prior to every witness's testimony or in the middle of every witness's testimony. The court has given the limiting instruction twice and will do so at the end of the case as well. And there may be other instances, but not at every juncture where evidence is being offered.
Yes, sir.
All right, so this exhibit is admitted. You may bring the jury. Thank you. The objection is overruled. The exhibit is admitted.
May it please the court, Your Honor.
These are. Let me get it. Can make me feel better.
Just very quickly, when we left off stage 441, now admitted into evidence, this was a text you received from the defendant. Is that right?
That's correct.
And the date on that is September 26th.
September 26th, yes.
Is that 2021?
It is.
Is this the text of that text that the defendant sent to you?
It is.
I only have a couple more questions for you. Before I get to the end, one question I wanted to ask you was, what was the defendant's cell phone usage like?
He was always on his phone, always on his cell phone, always on his office phone. He would quit one conversation and grab another. Sometimes he would have both phones to his ear.
Would it be unusual for the defendant to go anywhere without a cell phone with him?
Absolutely.
I want to play for you what's been admitted to evidence in States 297. Let me have this input, please.
Quit, Cash. Quit. It's okay. Okay. Hey, he's got a bird in his mouth. What? Hey, Bubba. It's a guinea. This is a chicken. Come on, Cash. Come on, Cash. Quit.
Do you recognize any voices in that video?
I do. I hear three voices.
And tell me who you hear.
I hear Paul Murdaugh, Maggie Murdaugh, and Alex Murdaugh.
And how sure are you?
I'm 100% sure.
Can I have the Elmo one more time, please?
I'm sorry. Oh.
Going back to States 441. Can you read just that one sentence starting where my finger's pointing that the defendant sent to you?
The worst part is knowing I did the most damage to those I love the most.
Cross-examination.
What?
Good morning.
Ms. Griswold, were you hired by Alec to work at the law firm?
I was hired by the firm, but he was in one of the meetings and it was my understanding that I was going to be working for him.
Right. And so you interviewed with him?
I did.
And you've been working, you worked with him for?
About 9 years.
9 years.
Yes, sir.
And 1 second, left.
Well, what? What? You didn't like?
My understanding is that you moved back to Hampton because your father was ill?
My father was ill. Yes, sir.
And then, so you moved your family back, you and your husband and?
Right. My husband and my daughter and I moved to be closer to my dad and help my mom with him.
And you got a job working at the law firm. And did you work exclusively for Mr. Alex Murdaugh?
Yes. I mean, there was other attorneys that I might do some work for here and there, but primarily Alex was who my attorney was.
And if you needed to take time off for personal matters, would you just have to run it by Alex?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And he put family first at work, did he not?
Most of the time, yes.
And he encouraged you to put your family first.
Absolutely.
And I think your husband had a heart attack. He was in the hospital for quite some time.
Yes, for 5 weeks before he ultimately passed away.
And I'm sorry to hear that.
Thank you.
But Alec encouraged you to do all you needed to do to care for him and don't worry about work. Isn't that right?
Yes, he did.
And you didn't miss a paycheck.
I sure didn't.
Is he a good person to work for?
It was hit or miss. I cared about him. I respected him. I loved him. You know, you can't be that close and work with somebody without having, you know, developing feelings for them and their family members.
Right.
But it was hard to work for him sometimes. He was a bit erratic, and yeah, for all the respect and love I had for him, it was still very difficult to work for him.
I think your description was he was like a Tasmanian devil that would come through at the end of the day.
He would.
And he was frenetic.
Yes.
Okay, and but people came to him if they needed something, right?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And so he had a lot of people coming, and did he ever say no to anybody's request?
He didn't know the word no.
Right. And well, he would want to schedule his appointments around his family's commitments, wouldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like if the Buster and Paul had baseball season, he'd be sure to block all that out off his calendar, wouldn't he?
Most of the time. Sometimes he didn't tell us about personal matters or things where they were going until the day of or whatever, and we would have to reschedule stuff. But if it was on the calendar, yes, he was going to be there for anything that the boys had going on.
He put in his work life family first. Is
Yes,
that right?
that's correct.
You would agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that.
And you got to know Maggie, did you know?
did. Yes, sir.
And she was thoughtful for you on your birthday and anything you had going on?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you mentioned the Ferris trial in Columbia. That was in Columbia, wasn't it?
That was, yes, sir.
And you went to the trial, didn't you?
I did.
And you remember Alec going up on a Sunday, and he spent the night in the hospital because his dad was going to have surgery the next day?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it seems like it's been a long time, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Maggie came up on Monday and stayed with him during the trial, right?
I never did see her. Our paths never crossed because I was kind of in work mode, but I know she was there.
Right. And he traveled frequently with Maggie on work trips, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
And he would take his family to
What does that have to
conventions
do with anything?
when they would have work, right?
As far as I know, yes, sir.
And Alec wasn't the type of guy that would go off on a guy's trip. His trips were family trips.
I mean, I don't know that without a shadow of a doubt, but I know a lot of his trips were family related, something with him and Maggie, or him and Maggie and the boys and their significant others.
Right. And he was real close with Maggie's family too, wasn't he?
Yes, it appeared that they were very close.
And if Mr. Brandstatter's, Maggie's dad, couldn't get in touch with Alec on his cell phone, he would call you and ask, where's Alec?
Yeah, he would call myself or Christy and say, hey, can you get Alec to give me a call? Yeah,
And they communicated quite frequently, didn't
they did.
they? And did you meet Mr. and Ms. Brandstatter?
I didn't meet him until we had Mr. Randolph he got the,
Order of the Palmetto?
Yeah, and that's when I met them. That was the first time I'd ever met Maggie's parents.
And if Alec was in even a deposition, and if Maggie or Paul or Buster would call, I mean, he would walk out and take the call, wouldn't he?
I never was present with them. I've heard rumors of such, but I was never present with him at depositions and mediations.
Well, in the office, if he was in a meeting, he would always take their calls, wouldn't he?
Absolutely. Yes.
Never say, oh, gosh, tell her I'd call her back. He'd take her call.
No, he never put off calls with his family. He always talked to them.
Now, You were talking about the night that you learned that Maggie and Paul were murdered, that you thought when you first got the call that it was about Mr. Randolph.
Correct.
And we're talking about Mr. Randolph murder.
That's correct.
Alex and Randy's dad.
Yes, sir.
Because it was well known that he had just been put back in the hospital and his condition was not well.
Yeah, it was my understanding that at that point, the family was making arrangements to bring him home and hospice may be involved. And so obviously we were all expecting awful news.
And he in fact did die on Thursday, June 10th, I believe.
I believe so too, yes, sir.
Right. And after that, you said that, the whole law firm rallied around not just Alec, but Alec and Randy and their families.
Absolutely.
Okay. And that's
And we
what-
rallied around each other because we were scared, we were worried.
Right. And then after, well, I guess there was like a tidal wave of media surrounding the law firm at some point in time, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
And so y'all had to, be careful with comings and goings, and that was kind of scary, I think.
It was. We ended up having to lock the front door because they would just walk in and just overwhelm the receptionist. So it became like a daily habit there for a few weeks. So we had to end up locking the door.
And as a result of Maggie and Paul's tragic murder, Alex Murdaugh became front and center of a media spotlight, didn't he?
He did, yes, sir.
And it wasn't, and there were cameras outside the court, outside the office frequently, right?
There were, yes, sir.
There were cameras out at Moselle.
I think so. I didn't go out there, but I'm assuming they probably were.
And all the buzz was about Alex Murdaugh and what happened to Maggie and Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
Y'all behave shadows on the job.
And all the while you were around Alec on occasion, and you noticed his demeanor, and he was grieving greatly, was he not?
He was grieving, and he was also very humble. He had changed dramatically. Afterwards, he was more mellow, and he would come in the mornings, and instead of yelling Christy, Nanette, and telling us what to do, he would actually come to our desk and say hello and check on us, and we would in turn check on him. So he was very different after the murders.
And he had a hard time working after the murders?
Absolutely, yeah, as you could imagine.
Sure. And you're aware, and you had to keep up with his whereabouts, but he spent a lot of time with Maggie and Maggie's parents.
Yeah, he would tell me that he would have weekend plans, and I would hear him on the phone with his in-law and making plans to meet up for the weekend.
And he stayed in Somerville a good bit with Buster, with Maggie's parents.
As far as I know, yes, sir.
And he and Buster traveled up to the upstate, to Lake Huey or something. Are you aware of that?
I remember him saying, the family had property or something up there, his in-laws, and they were all getting together.
And you're aware that Alec would not spend a single night after Maggie and Paul were murdered at Moselle.
Yes, sir. I knew that.
And when he was working in Hampton, he was either commuting from Somerville, Edisto, or staying with his brother Randy, or something like that.
I knew he was either staying with family or, he was coming back from Somerville or Greenville from being with the in-laws, but that's all I knew.
But he never spent one night more at Moselle.
Not as far as I know, yes, sir.
Now, you were asked questions about Mr. Waters about the Ferris matter was the furthest thing from your mind after murder of Maggie and Paul, right?
Yes, sir.
And that you didn't do any more about that after Maggie and Paul's murder, right?
That's correct.
But I think you also said that you'd conveyed your concerns to Jeannie Seconder and that she essentially took over.
That, yes, when I gave it to her, I knew she told me she would take it from there. And so I know I gave it to her and that was that.
And so there's really nothing more for you to do on the Ferris matter after you turned it over to Jeannie, right?
Correct.
And then you were in Alex's office one day looking for a file and you stumbled across this canceled check.
Yes, sir. It must have been underneath the file. I wanted in between that and something else. So when I lifted my file, it fluttered to the floor.
And and you felt, I think you talked to this jury about how this whole thing put you in a bad spot. And your daughter said you need to dust your resume off or something like that.
That's
right?
correct. Yes, sir. I was worried. I was hoping I was wrong. I was hoping that my gut feeling was wrong and that what I was looking at was not money being stolen and that he was not doing that. I was hoping I was wrong, but at the same time, I was scared to turn it in because what if they, look into it and it's nothing, there's nothing going on and then, it disturbs the relationship we had working together and, what would I do? Would I be able to stay at the firm after turning him in on something so bad that he could lose his job over it? So I was concerned. I was concerned for my livelihood. I'm a single mom with a teenage daughter.
And nothing happened to your job, right?
No, sir. Nothing happened to my job.
It's Alex who lost his job, right?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
And you mentioned in what's in the evidence as defendant's exhibit number 441 is a text that you received from Alex, right?
That's correct.
And was it just to you or was it you and
Me and Christy, his other secretary.
The other secretary? And the date is Sunday, September 26th at 4:30 p.m. in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
And you mentioned it was from rehab?
Yes, as far as I knew, it was rehab. I assumed it was probably one of the steps of reaching out to those that you hurt and telling them you're sorry.
And Alec was in rehab?
Yes, sir. As far as I know, he was.
Okay. And I want you to read this to the jury, the whole email, if you don't mind,
Okay.
please.
Sure. Hey, it's Alec. I'm finally feeling a little better each day. I'm over the worst, but still feel like I have the flu. Real weak. I have been worried about y'all, and I'm sorry I didn't get to tell y'all myself. I know both of you been hurt badly by me. I know it sounds hollow, but I am truly sorry. The better I get, the more guilt I have. I have an awful lot to try to make right when I get out of here. The worst part is knowing I did the most damage to those I love the most. I'm not real sure how I let myself get where I did. I'm committed to getting better and hope to mend as many relationships as I can. You both are special people and important to me. Please know how sorry I am to have made you part of my misdeeds. I hope you are doing as well as possible. I love you very much. Please tell Cheryl and Haley hello, and I'm sorry. All my love.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Your Honor.
Anything further?
Very quickly, Your Honor. Mr. Griffin asked you about whether or not you were worried about losing your job over these Ferris fees. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then he asked you, the defendant lost his job, right?
That's correct.
After the murders, but before September, the defendant still had his job, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He still had his law license, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
You said in response to defense counsel's question that people came to him if they needed something, correct?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. He was trusted by everybody, and they knew that if they needed something, all they had to do was reach out and he was going to help them.
He was trusted by everybody. Did you trust him?
I trusted him. Yes, sir.
People came to him for anything, like all these clients right here?
Yes, sir.
He was a prominent lawyer,
Yes, he was.
one of the most prominent in the region.
Yes.
And all of that came to an end in September 2021 when all of that came out, did it not?
Right. When I found the check, I knew that he had lied to me and that he'd stolen that money.
Thank you. You may step down. You may call your next witness.
You guys, I'm not feeling good, as you can probably tell. So I think I'm going to go back to bed, and we will pick this up tomorrow where we left off. I'm sorry, it's such a short stream today, guys. I don't know. I can't shake this flare or whatever it is, and I'm just, it's hurting, and I'm very, very, very tired. So I will see you guys in the morning at 9, and we'll have a normal, regular day of streaming. Hopefully I'll feel better. I think it's the weather. I think it's been storming every day, and it just messes me up. So tomorrow, guys, sorry about that. Have a good evening. Bye.